way out in the western Weber area, kind of in the Boondocks area, right on top of the hill, the little mountain. And what it is Weber Basin owns a facility there for water storage. And what they're looking to do is demolish an old tank and then just build a new one in its place. They're also working on changing the parcel boundary through a boundary line adjustment. So that way it'll accommodate a little bit bigger tank. They'll be able to meet the setbacks pretty easily and make those needed improvements. That.
Commissioners, any questions on that one? All right. Next item. Thanks, Felix. 5.2, Charlie. No, Tammy, I'm sorry. I got one ahead. I apologize.
Commissioners, this came before you last month as a hearing for a request to rezone 10 acres from A1 to RE15. And it's coming back before you without the hearing component, as we've already had that and already noticed for that. I believe the concerns that were brought up in the last meeting had to do with something in writing regarding open space, addressing that smart growth principle, as well as the substandard road, which I will reiterate, I think what was stated in the last meeting, which was that is typically addressed at subdivision. So we know how to calculate the developer's proportionate share as far as what to contribute regarding that substandard roadway. But regarding the open space and the actual rezone application itself, the developer has received a letter. Each of you have a hard copy of that. And we can upload that into Frontier later, probably tomorrow morning. That indicates a voluntary donation from the developer of $2,000 per lot to go to the park district. That is something that will be collected at the subdivision level of development. Do you have any questions regarding this one?
Well, I've got one, and
Sure.
I'm bringing this up because I thought that I heard it in the conversation in our last meeting, and maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But there was some talk about road improvement up on the corner of 2200 and 4300 where the church is. So
Correct.
the side of the road.
Mhm.
So where are we at on that? Did we discuss and take that to the point where it was out of the discussion, or is that still part of our discussion here?
I'm not sure that we necessarily landed on something concrete at that time. I know that Commissioner Edwards had some concerns regarding approving a rezone along a substandard road. And we talked about how the subdivision ordinance, which would be the next step after that rezone, addresses those substandard road requirements. We did meet with engineering just briefly and talked about what that proportionate share would look like. Our code talks about measuring the length of the substandard road up to the furthest corner of the development, which in this case is roughly about 1,650 feet from 4,300 west and to the westernmost corner. So the way the code talks about a proportionate share and the way they lay out that calculation is you would look at how many potential lots you've got along 2200 south that could be developed, which by our rough calculations on GeoGizmo is about 8 lots. And then you would add that to the developer's proposed lots, 33 lots. And the cost estimate for improving the roadway, the half width of that roadway divided by that many lots would be the developer's proportionate share.
Okay.
Does that help answer that? I mean, we haven't landed on a decision, but we do have a direction. We know what needs to be done.
Okay. Yeah, that helps. That kind of
Okay.
refreshes my memory and gives me more of a calculation. I don't know that we had that at our last meeting.
I don't
Maybe
think we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go to sleep up here. You never know.
Well, you're good. And we, staff doesn't always know what the planning commission is going to be hitting hard on. The substandard road, we don't typically discuss that during rezone. That's probably why it wasn't calculated by staff at the last meeting.
Okay.
One thing we have talked about with this internally with the engineering division is to get some type of engineered plan of the road design between that whole block area. And that could be something that we would look at typically at the subdivision level to have that included as part of the review. Because it does make, when we started looking at it in detail, because where the school put their curb and gutter, there's going to be a little bit of a jog in the road. It's not going to be totally straight how it is right now. Most likely, if we're wanting to keep it at the, did we end up on 66 feet on that road? 80 feet. Yeah, that's why we were doing the jog, because the school was looking at more of the 66. And to get the 80 feet, once we get past the school going west, it's going to require a little bit of a jog to maintain that 80 foot. And so that's something that we'll probably be looking at the developer to provide some designs of how that would be laid out.
Okay. And at that corner, at that intersection, is there going to be a left-hand turn lane and a right-hand turn lane going north and south? Do we have any idea?
We don't at this time, but that's something, we'd be looking at.
Okay. I'm just kind of thinking about that amount of traffic and kind of, looking at getting the feel of how it is over at Fremont. And, they've got on 4700, it's pretty wide, but on the, I can't remember what the east-west is right there on the north side of it, but it's, it's fairly big too, but there's also some parking stalls built along there. So maybe it feels bigger than it really is. I don't know.
Yeah, and as we get into that in more detail, we'll be working with our legal department on what's the proportionate cost of what we can require and what we can't. Because if we go beyond that, we could, end up in legal issues. So we have to look at that as well.
Okay, very good. Commissioners, anything to add? Okay, thanks, Tammy. Now, Charlie.
You're just eager to hear from me.
Always, always. I need a
I
nap, Charlie.
I don't actually have very much to present on this. I was under the impression up until yesterday that the applicant was comfortable with holding off for just a little bit. But he mentioned yesterday that he wants it on the agenda with an up or down vote. It's the same rezone that you guys saw before. However, the applicant has informed me that at this time, there's no intention of providing additional open space. And he's happy to provide a park and all that, but he's just looking for a 5-acre rezone of commercial right now. So with what you have in your application, I think it showed 4 acres commercial and 19 acres as open space. The request has evolved into just 5 acres of commercial, and he would like you to pass on a recommendation or a referral either up or down to the county commission in this meeting.
So Charlie, I'm looking at, I think, the new agenda. Is the information for this in there or not? Or is there not any information?
It's not in, I couldn't get the packet in there in time.
Okay.
It's the same information from the previous packet, which I can go and print those out and bring them up to you guys if you need. So this is the Cherokee Village parcel. I think we heard it in public hearing for a rezone in our December meeting.
Do you have it? Can you bring it up?
Yep, I can.
When we get to it.
I can pull it up on the screen. I can walk you through the presentation that I gave you. I can also go print out a packet if you'd like to read through the packet. Yes, it is. Yep.
I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
So the original recommendation that I gave you on the 4 acres commercial and 19 acres open space was a positive recommendation. It was lockstep with what the general plan was asking for. Also, you rarely see 19 acres rezone open space in exchange for 4 acres of commercial. And so I thought it would be really important to jump on it at the time. Applicant has mentioned his time constraint. The only reason, any of that was even on the table in the first place was there's some time constraints, and we wanted to make sure it was an easy decision. The extra delay has changed the circumstances for him. So he wants to have whatever flexible opportunities are still in the zone that he's in instead of having the open space. So,
so he's right now is just asking for rezone of the 4 acres.
Yeah, it's
and
actually-
not anything else.
It's actually 5.
5.
That he's mentioned in his email, so it's changed.
Okay.
But the configuration is still generally the same. It's right along 900 South, which is the same road that leads to the elementary school. That road is kind of intended to be the main street for West Weber Village. So you head down 4700 and then east-west 900 South would be kind of that main street village. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next session as well.
And just one thing to add to that, and I apologize because Director Grover wanted us to be able to go over the rules of order with legal before the meeting. So we're going to jump to that next, but just for the commission's information, that item was tabled. So just so that we know what the status was from the last time that we saw it.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry.
Got a question. How far off are we on having the form-based code?
I don't think we're very far. Now, it really comes down to what you guys say in today's meeting. I'd really like to focus on that. We've got a lot of other ordinances to work on, but I feel like that one is, we can chew that because most of it's already been vetted. I think the majority of what's going to come out of the planning commission consideration discussion on that is just going to be question and answer, just to make sure you guys know how it works. We can make whatever tweaks you're asking for. So honestly, we could walk away from this meeting knowing that it's on the next, if you're comfortable, knowing that it's on the agenda for your next meeting as a public hearing. Well,
Yeah,
next meeting not being next week, meeting being February.
Right.
Already. Anyway, I really like the concept of the village that was hooked to that.
Mhm.
And I don't know whether but I do see a lot of value in that form base form base. Thanks,
A lot of value in the
Mr.
form.
Chairman, in making communities out west. I think that's gonna add something that would probably make Warren a little bit different than Westport, but still have the community feel. So that's why I asked that question. And thank you.
Any other questions for me on this project?
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. Legal or director?
Yes.
Whichever way we want to go.
So just right before this meeting around the water cooler, I was chatting with Cortland and he was mentioning that they were talking about the rules of order in their legal meeting this morning. And they had some concerns about conflict of interest that is currently in the ordinance. And maybe Liam, you can go into a little bit more detail on that and some of the concerns that you guys had.
Yeah, absolutely. The current rules of order do address conflict of interest, and that's found on page 2. It's in section 4 of the rules of order. And just in the last few months, the county commissioners have been under a lot of scrutiny for conflict of interest and even perceived conflict of interest. And their rules of order have been called into question by attorneys as well as citizens. So we looked at the rules of order for the planning commissioners, which Ogden Valley and you both have the same rules of order. And we decided just this morning, sorry, not a lot of warning here, that we want to revise and reevaluate section 4 of the planning commission's rules of order as far as it relates to conflict of interest. So primarily where we're going is in the middle of this paragraph, after a member of the planning commission feels that, do you guys have a copy of the rules of order up there with you? Okay, there is a section that allows the planning commission to vote to decide whether an actual, apparent, or reasonably foreseeable conflict of interest does exist, and whether the commissioner should withdraw from participation in voting. That's the sentence that's causing my office a little bit of concern, and we're going to evaluate whether that's appropriate or whether we need to revise that language of allowing the other commissioners to decide whether somebody does have a conflict of interest and whether they should be removed from attending the meeting or participating. It causes some concern, especially if an individual does disclose that they do have a conflict of interest and the other commissioners then vote and decide that they do not. it causes a little bit of legal problems. So we're going to pull the approval for the rules of order. We made some other changes as well, little minor changes regarding the Open and Public Meetings Act. And that's why this document was really here, because of the Open and Public Meeting Act change, which was minimal. But we're going to pull the document as a whole off of today's agenda and revise this section and then come back and have it on hopefully next meeting or next month's.
Okay. Do you have any, any thoughts on how you're going to amend or?
Yeah, we're probably going to shorten and delete much of that in section 4.
So if someone states they have a conflict, then. that's
Then they
it.
can state that they have a conflict and it will be done.
Yes, please.
So what happens if other members of the public or the other commissioners know that there is a conflict of interest for a different member that is not disclosing the conflict of interest?
yeah.
Or perceives there is an issue?
Yeah, so it is on the shoulders and the burden of the individual with that conflict of interest to disclose it. A member of the public at any time can comment in the comment period that, hey, I perceive that Commissioner so-and-so does have a conflict of interest and here's why. And they can make that known. And then we can address that with the commissioner as needs be. But that's kind of where it is. And so, yeah, even as a commission member, if you, in the beginning of the meeting, if you would like to bring to light or at the agenda item, whichever time is the most appropriate, bring to light your perceived conflict of interest of another individual, you can bring that up. There's nothing that prohibits you from bringing that up, but it won't be your decision as to whether that person is removed from participation in that meeting.
And one other question. So, I mean, it's hard to say what the conflict of interest is. We all are involved in the community that we're making decisions for. So whether it's monetary or not, there are a lot of, it's difficult to draw a line, but we're all citizens. So I guess the part at the beginning that I don't like, that it says you have to completely withdraw. Is there any way that you can be a member of the audience and comment within the 3-minute period?
Yes, so that good you brought that up, because that is another part of our concern, the
Okay.
fact that they have to completely withdraw, and we
Okay.
don't like that either. And so we, in our discussion this morning, and in consideration of the county commissioners and their rules of order, we're going to change that language as well, because we don't feel it's appropriate that they are forced to withdraw after they disclose that, because you can still disclose a conflict or a perceived conflict of interest and in some situations still participate and still have it done. It's fine, even especially if it's a perceived conflict of interest. So,
Okay. Those are all my questions.
Well, based on the story that was in the paper, I was at the meeting that was mentioned in that story, and I did hear that the conflict of interest was brought up. The vote was not taken. That commissioner was left out. So if this has anything to do with that, there's my 2 cents worth.
No, we appreciate that. And we'll be doing some training with you on conflict of interest and other portions of, your duties. Probably in the February or March meeting, just as part of the training process. So we'll bring you up to speed on those things as well. Just a good rule of thumb is with legislative items, you can, as we've talked before, you can talk about those things with members of the community when you run into them. But when you get to administrative items, that's where, that conflict of interest really becomes a crucial thing. So. Okay, very good. Anything else on that?
no, I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Is that good?
Okay. Commissioners, any other questions or concerns on that? Okay. All right, well. Oh, commissioners, I did have, June sent out something about the meeting change from the 17th next week to the 18th. I think most of you have replied that the 18th works. Does it not work for any of you guys or ladies?
It's my wedding anniversary.
What?
I want to miss that.
Ah, right.
What a great way to celebrate. Bring her with you.
No, I actually have a kitchen pass for the 18th, so that's good for me.
Oh, man.
No, it's all good.
I hate it when I'm in trouble with the boss.
No, no. Well, she who must be obeyed.
Okay, thank you.
Big bouquet.
Big bouquet. Yeah.
All right, well. We'll sit tight for a moment. We'll start with 5.
Since we have a brief minute. Feel dumb because I might be the only one confused by this. But like when I look at the agenda
Mhm.
sometimes and then try to find the same one. So like one of them that's on the agenda today is Mr. Bucks, right? The title that's back in the packet doesn't always match what's on the agenda. Is it just me that's getting confused, or is that? I mean, it has like partial pieces of it or what it's referred to, but then when it's on the person requesting. Say that, and like on that one, the address was different. And so I was like, is this the same thing or is this a different item? It could totally be just me being confused easily and not seeing something the way I should see it, but.
No, I think I've had that same kind of situation before. I mean, I think it's mostly Charlie's fault because I think he does that on purpose so that we
Well, then
can,
I would
kind of hunt and
definitely-
peck for it.
Um,
Big shoulders.
and it may have been on the previous one, not the updated one. Let's see, it would be 5.1. So
Yeah, we can make it better, but the important thing is when you look at it to go to the file number. And like on the
ZMA.
first one, it has CUP 2022-16. And if you go to the file number, and we can move the file number up to the front, up to the top, because under applicant information, it's at the bottom of that. So if we move that up to the front, so that it's more easier to follow the file numbers.
Right here, Casey. You spotted it yet, but it's right here. So then this number matches up with what's on the agenda.
So that's okay. That helps. I just need. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Would,
The updated.
Yeah, wasn't there?
There's
There
another
was some.
item.
There's
another item. No,
Removed anything.
no, nothing was removed.
Did you get my email today?
yeah, it was moved from the work session up to the,
But wasn't there?
that was the one.
Yeah. Did you not get a new one?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Would you guys like a hard copy of that Terry key? Because we have a few minutes, we could run up and get that for you. Okay.
That'll work. Okay. Anything else, commissioners?
Okay, so the first that is 5.1 and then 5. Right, okay.
I thought there was hard copies for everyone up here.
Only
The new
one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So maybe for the one that with the staff report where it says approximate address, I think that's where I was getting confused because it says 2139 South, 4300 West, which is close to this area, but it's a different street. Which if we had other items on the agenda might cause more confusion, you know what I mean? But
Right.
Yeah, that's likely a typo by staff. I'm gonna apologize.
No,
I
that's
think
fine.
an
Okay.
older version was sent
Okay.
out to you guys.
I just was making sure there wasn't something that I was missing. Thank you.
Commissioner, does it make sense to go by the file number? Are you good with that,
Yes.
or did you want to see
Yes.
something
No.
different?
No, that's good education for me. So thank you. I appreciate it.
No, no problem. Just
That makes sense.
we don't want anybody to quit over something like that. So we'll fix it.
I've quit for less than
can.
that, so yeah. it's
Yeah,
good.
so- No, we're not gonna have that happen.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll get this thing started. Thank you and welcome, by the way. Okay, Commissioner Edwards is excused from tonight's meeting. Everyone else is present. And he's okay, good. All right, and he's with us in the cyberspace area. Thanks for joining us, Commissioner Edwards. Okay, on that note, looks like we're we went over some items on the conflict of interest portion of the rules of order. So we've got that to look forward to at our next meeting. But the first the first item on our meeting tonight is to vote on a new chair and vice chair for 2023. And normally what we do at this point is just open it up, and I will ask for a nomination we'll start with the chair position.
Chair, before we take nominations, can I ask a question? Sorry, with
No, certainly.
so I've been thinking about this and sorry, hopefully this doesn't put you in a spot, but with the general plan just coming out and having all that new stuff, for me, I know that I don't want that position at all, or, so, and I don't know how the other ones feel, but I like how things are right now. And I know that I think 2 terms, right? So technically it would be that you would be up, but is there any way so that we have that continuity and that to continue on? I just feel like the chairs had to have more meetings than we have with all that stuff with those changes. So would it be possible to just keep it the way it is right now? And I'm speaking for myself. Sorry, I don't know how it is for all of you, but is that something that we can do?
We definitely could do that, but we would need to amend our rules of order.
Okay.
And so if you want to postpone voting on the chair and the vice chair right now, we could postpone that till we get the rules of order. And if you want us to include something in there with the chair and the vice chair term being extended. I mentioned in our chair and vice chair meeting, I like that idea to a certain extent, but I do have some reservations about that, especially if we have a chair that we may not like so much as Andrew.
Yeah.
and I've seen that it's just healthy with planning commissions to have people, go into those positions so they learn the duties and then and kind of share that responsibility. And we can go back and change those things if we change it right now and we find that we want to change that down the road. It's just, I'm not sure where the Ogden Valley Planning Commission is on this as well. And typically the rules of order that we have right now is for the Ogden Valley. So we could have something separate for Western Weber and then something separate for Ogden Valley on that if you wanted to go that route.
Well, and generally, I completely agree with, having somebody else come in just fresh, right? But I feel like just with what we've gone through the last year, whatever, it would be nice to have some of that continuity. But and I'm speaking for myself. I don't know how you feel about that. And even the chair, sorry, I'm kind of just throwing you in there, not knowing if that's even what you want, but yeah.
Well, my comment is it's up to the commission. I will be happy to serve for, whatever is decided, another term, whatever that term means. That's fine with me. So, I guess.
And I hope if somebody else was feeling like they wanted that, I don't want you to feel like I'm not in favor of that either. I just been thinking about this and like, well, I know he does a great job and the stuff that's been going on would be nice to.
And we're not able to re-elect Andrew as the chair, the term
Right now, you cannot with the
because of the
current,
rules of order, if I remember correct.
yes, yep. So we would need to do a revision to the rules of order, and we can just put that off for another month. And work under the current regime.
So I'll ask the commissioners to please speak up and give us what's on your mind.
Unless Ken.
I think you do a great job.
Absolutely not.
You would be.
You know, I tend to agree with what Casey has said on this. We've had two people and they're in more meetings than we are. And I think that there's some value in that at this point. At the same time, I think that other people need to have an opportunity to do this if they want to. But right now, I'm thinking that maybe once we kind of get this thing pretty much put to bed, I think that may be a better time to do that. I just kind of feel like that we have some good continuity and we're meeting a lot. Going to be adding 1 or 2, maybe 4 meetings a month. So, we got 2 people that stump broke on that. And I think there might be some value having a look to that. Anyway, that's my 2 bit.
For a lot of things. Thank you for using terms I can understand.
That got real rural, didn't it?
Yeah, well, we are Western Weber County.
We are. There'll be an edited version later on.
Yeah. And kind of edit that, will you, Jim?
Other commissioners? I'm not sure how we, please give your comments and then I'll ask for director and legal direction here on where we handle it from here. So any other comments on this?
Apologize for always.
Okay.
There's another way.
Yeah. And
That's what it is.
yeah.
The rules, so we're not.
It really doesn't matter to me. Whatever the commission wants to do. I'm good with any of the above. I'm E.
He's used to it.
So, yeah, if you guys want us to change the rules, we can, but if you want to just switch them, you could do that tonight.
Speak or spec. The offer for a nomination or motion and whatever you want to call it is still open. So,
Well, I'd like a motion that we elect a new chair? What is the term?
Probably a nomination. first, right?
Nomination, thank you. I motion a nomination, or I just nominate. Let's make this really complicated. Bryn Edwards is our chair.
all right. And then now we go through the vote or roll call.
Yes.
Okay.
For that, and then you go to vice chair.
Okay. All right. Very good. So this is for Chair Bryn Edwards. It's the motion and second, and Commissioner Neville,
Yay. I.
Commissioner Clontz,
Hi.
Commissioner McCormick.
Aye.
Commissioner Wicker,
Hi.
Commissioner Andriotti.
Aye.
Perfect. There we go. And chair votes aye as well. So that works. All right. Now that motion passed, election motion, whatever. Next item is for the vice chair. So I'll ask for a nomination for vice chair.
Mr. Chair, I nominate Andrew Fabero for vice chair.
Okay. Have a motion. I'll ask for a second. Second. Motion and a second. Okay. Commissioner Neville,
Aye.
Commissioner Clontz,
Hi.
Commissioner Andriotti,
Aye.
Commissioner Wickern,
Hi.
Commissioner McCormick.
Aye.
Okay. I don't think I can vote on that, so.
You gotta vote
motion
for
carries.
yourself. You gotta approve yourself, right?
That's a difficult thing to do. I think some alcohol might have to be involved in that. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, very good. So we have a new chair and vice chair for next year. And since the new chair is not present, I guess in my new role as vice chair, I'll carry on. Very good. Thank you. Next item is for the minutes from the December 13th meeting. And did anyone have any comments or concerns on those minutes?
I have one. Sorry, I know it's like he's gonna speak even on minutes. Come on. But it's one small thing and maybe it's not significant. Let me know. But on one of the statements that I made, it says that I was concerned about it being my neighborhood for the development, and that was incorrect. It's not my neighborhood. It was just, I was concerned about it as in general for the public, I guess. So, yeah. Let me find it. I had it until I started switching agendas. Sorry.
These are magic. You want to try these?
Yeah. I do need those. Oh, okay, so page 8 of the minutes, where it says Commissioner Neville asks how this will affect his neighborhood on like this second paragraph, first sentence of the second paragraph. Yeah, the neighborhood would be fine.
Community.
Yeah, or the community, yeah. And honestly, I probably said something like that, but that wasn't my intention, so I guess so. I may have said it to confuse you, sorry, or not, and you know what I mean.
I do my best, so I'm happy to make that change.
You're great, James, thanks. That was my only concern.
Okay, very good. So with that correction, we'll go ahead. We can go ahead and approve them, even though a correction's has got to be made, right? Or has been asked to be made.
Yeah, you can approve them with that correction.
Okay, we'll approve the minutes from the December 13th meeting, adding in the correction that was made. Okay, next item on our agenda, petitions, applications, and public hearings. Item number 4, consent item 4.1 CUP 2022-16. Consideration and action on a conditional use permit for Weber Basin Water Conservancy District to rebuild a water storage tank in the Little Mountain Western Weber area located at 10,000 West, 900 South. And we had some information. We have information in our packet, and Felix also gave us some information in the pre-meeting. Does anyone have any more information or a need for any more information on that item? Okay. Very good. All right. And on that item, then we need to do, I can't remember. Do we need to do a vote on that? No.
You just need to vote, but not a roll call.
Not a roll call. Okay. So I'll ask for a motion for approval of consent item number 4.1 CUP 2022-16.
Mr. Chair, I recommend we approve consent item CUP 2022-16.
Okay. Second. Have a motion and a second. And let me just clarify that on the motion, that what your motion considers is everything that is in tonight's
Yes.
report, staff report. All right, what staff recommendations are and any findings. Okay, very good. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thanks very much. Petitions, applications, and public hearings continued. Item number 5.1 ZMA 2022-01. Decision on a request for approval of a zoning map amendment to rezone approximately 10 acres located at approximately 4350 West, 2200 South from A1 zone to RE15. Tammy.
Good evening, commissioners. If you recall, this application was brought before you in December of 2022. Let me just see if I can share my screen here real quick. This is a request to rezone 10 acres immediately west of the new high school out off of 4300 west and 2200 south. The request, as you've already stated, Chair, is to rezone 10 acres in the A1 zone to the RE15 zone. Petitioner is looking for approximately 25 lots based on that zoning, based on the updated future land uses map that was adopted with the Western Weaver General Plan this last year that shows that area as medium-sized residential type density, which is about 15,000 square feet. This is the subject parcel here. I'm not entirely sure what to present, what else to present. I know we had a hearing last month and there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of questions from the public planning commissioners rather. I do recall that one of those concerns was pulling sewer past existing residences and whether or not these residences would be forced to tie into that sewer line. While there is state statute that requires that, the health department ultimately would be the ones to make that requirement. And in discussions with the health department after that last hearing, they stated that unless a septic system has failed, they would not require these 11 residents to tie into this new line that would be coming in.
And failure is based on Weber County Health
Yes,
making that recommendation that there's been a failure. Okay.
correct.
Commissioners, any questions or concerns on this item?
Tammy, do you know how they determine whether it's a failure or not?
That is an in-depth question for the health department. I couldn't tell you that, sorry. The other thing I did want to bring up, there was a concern regarding open space and needing something more specific to address the open space requirement. And as a reminder, these applicants are not entitled to the rezones, but they have a greater chance of having them move forward to the county commission and possibly ultimately approved if they can hit every one of those smart growth principles. Where the developer is looking for more than twice the density that would otherwise be allowed in the current zone, he is required by the new general plan to hit those smart growth principles. And so he has provided, or rather the Parks District has provided a written agreement, I guess, or approval of a plan between the developer and the Parks District. You have that before you. Let me pull it up on the screen here. There was some discussion as to what a proportionate fee or donation, let's use the word donation, I'm sorry, what a proportionate donation would be per lot. And I believe what was decided was about 2,000 per lot. And so that's what's been agreed to with a signed letter from Taylor West Weaver Park District. Again, we can upload this into Frontier. We just received this late last night, so it didn't quite make it into your packet.
So one question that I saw on that letter, and you
Yes.
mentioned it and it brought it glaringly to me, and that is second paragraph. The district will accept from the developer a donation of $2,000 per lot. Is that binding and or a liability of that term donation based on what was mentioned?
Well, it is voluntary. So while they are required to address that $2,000 is voluntary. Now, the park and the developer may agree on a different plan as they go through the subdivision process later on, and they're welcome to do that. It does have to be tied to the development agreement, however. So as long as it doesn't violate the development agreement that would be tied to this, our code would allow that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it just the term donation, it was like, well, okay, donation, but is really donation the right terminology to use? And maybe that's to be determined at a later time.
Well, and I think depending on the type of development and the impact that we're looking at, that amount may be a little bit different, right? Maybe different depending on their proximity to the nearest open space.
Sure, right. Commissioners, any comments or questions on this?
Chair, I have a question, just making sure that when these installations happen or when the money is transferred, do we do some sort of an escrow, or is this addressed at, when in the process is this addressed?
So this is typically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Grover, I think this is typically addressed at subdivision. There is an escrow that's put up and then that escrow is transferred to the Parks District.
Okay.
So before they can record the subdivision and begin to sell lots.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, anything else? Okay. Thanks, Tammy.
The developer is here if you have any questions. for him.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Anything further? Okay. All right, then. I will barring any discussion, I'll ask for a motion.
Chair. You guys gonna say chair, do we need not on this one or?
No, this isn't a public hearing.
No,
correct?
it's not.
It's-
Yeah, the public hearing in the last meeting was closed. If you chose to have additional public comment, you could entertain that, but it's not required because you closed the public hearing in the last meeting.
Commissioners? Public hearing, or excuse me, not public hearing. Do you want to take comments from the public? Okay,
As well.
all right, then we'll open this up for public comment. Please give us your name and where you live and 3 minutes. It's not a public hearing. We're just making comments. Yeah,
Byron White, 2200 South. As the planning commission has stated, the road on 2200 South is a substandard road and is 26 feet wide. But you mentioned in the last meeting, Single Tree could pay for the road to be widened because that road cannot facilitate that much traffic. You also have stated that the subdivision farming don't go well together. And I have stated multiple times, I need a point of diversion for my water shares. Also, the subdivision needs to put a berm on his property all the way down so that when I flood irrigate, and I plan on flood irrigating again, the water does not go on to his homes. I have no control over where the water goes when it soaks in. So we need to have a berm all the way down to the west side of his project to protect his project. On Single Tree subdivision, you do not have a 100-year stormwater retention basin. From what I understand, that's a state law. There is no 6-inch curb, only a 2% grade in the center of the road. If any of you are driving up 1800 South, you see that the new subdivision, the water is over the curb. There is no water where for that water to go, causing flooding on the road. Also, the park that he is trying to use for his green space is not even in Taylor and isn't even built. And the way you change things, you might not even build it. And there is no sidewalks that run all the way to it. The commissioners have also stated the size of the lots are small. Yes, very small, so small that you can't even have any farm animals, not even a chicken. When right next door on school property, they are slaughtering sheep and pigs for consumption. The 500-foot notification rule zoning change is another thing. He is bringing the sewer that affects 11 homes. They should be notified as well. I called the chief at the Weber County Fire or the Weber County Sewer. He said that is a state law, Title 108-38, paragraph 2-8, that states you have 90 days if we're within 300 feet to hook up. So to the sewer. So the best thing for all homeowners is to be annexed into his project and included into a Single Tree plat and surveyor's office so that we can be included into his project for the Weaver sewer line. I called the planning commission and then the health department. They said it's not going to make us hook up on this sewer, but it is a state law, even though Tammy told me it would not be enforced. The state said it will be. I do not want someone knocking on my door in November telling me I got 90 days to hook up to the sewer. And the only solution is if he wants to develop all of that 11 homes should be included in his sewer line and his annexation project. But we do not need 25 homes in west of Westfield High, turning his area into West Ogden. At least in West Ogden, I could have chickens. There is no cluster subdivisions in Taylor, and there is no reason to change the zoning to it. No animals to meet the needs of Single Tree cluster subdivision when there is still farming community. The bottom line is I don't want to be subsidized by this developer or any other cluster subdivision's profit margin.
thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Kylie White. I live on 2200 South as well. We want to keep the integrity of our rural community on this street. We want to give people space for their animals, and we know that people are more understanding if they have animals themselves than if they don't. We know that Weaver School District, Westfield High has their own farm right there. We have a farm of our own. People are not going to be calling the commissioners or the county as often if they have their own animals that smell, that they have to handle, that are getting out, that they can tolerate, and that they're doing things with, so they're more understanding to what's going on. I would appreciate it if we could start putting ideas of the current residents ahead of profit out here in Weaver County, and not just seeing what is the best interest of the builder, but what is the best interest of the community. We have a lot of problems with some of the developments that have happened. Look at Jacqueline Estates and some of the things that have happened where they said that they were going to do certain things with donations that were handed out from the residents in that area, and those things never came into fruition. There are issues that happened on 4700 with a farmer who was told that he would have a point of diversion in phase 1. That subdivision is now in phase 3. There is a lawsuit with that farmer because he doesn't have his water rights. There is the Saddlewood Estate on 1800. There's a house that is complete with no power because the builder got too eager to get the house built, but didn't put or provide the power for it. We're putting too many carriages above the house. We're doing too much with approving too many projects without all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed in the community. And we're suffering the consequences for what's approved. And then the developers and the builders don't know what they're doing. And it's our community that is suffering for this. The fire truck turnaround is a problem that is going to be now just going to be a place where people are putting their trailers and their boats, and those are what's going to be in those in that little corridor that he put for the fire truck instead of having a roundabout of some sort. 25 homes on 10 acres is a lot on this road and for this neighborhood. If these could be decreased, it would be greatly appreciated. Buck has whatever, he has the choice to do whatever he would like with his land, and I'm not saying he shouldn't do that, but putting 25 homes is a lot for us. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Well, commissioners, any discussion on this item?
Chair, I think it would be, I would like to hear from the developer about the main concerns I heard. The berm, point of diversion, and maybe the
Catch
fire
basin.
truck, turn around the water retention. I think engineering has looked at this, or that happens at subdivision.
Subdivision or has engineering already looked at this, Tammy?
No, not in detail. These are all, many of the concerns that were brought up are typically looked at closely at the subdivision
At the
level.
subdivision. And also the issue with the curb and gutter. I understand the desire to have the landscape, but I'm personally not a fan. I think we do need curb and gutter in these kind of areas, so.
That's a subdivision item as well. I
Correct.
think, right?
These are all still things that, the developers should at least be thinking about right now. So
Okay.
he may have some answers for you.
Okay, perfect.
Chad Buck, I live in Clearfield, Utah. So I've talked to Byron. When I first bought the land, I talked to Byron and told him I'd give him his head gate at the top of his property. He rode around in our truck with me and my dad. We told him we'd give him a head gate. That's not an issue. We'll do that. As far as the berm, the land is already like laser leveled. It goes from east to west. So it's already going to flow away from our property towards his, and then it'll drain in the southeast corner of the property, or southwest corner of his property. As far as the detention basin, it will actually be in what you see as lot 2. It'll be in the very southwest corner of the subdivision as well. Because there isn't an HOA or anything in this project, so the detention basin will be on just that one lot. That homeowner will take care of that. So.
Okay, commissioners?
Well, is the berm a subdivision item also?
Irrigation and drainages and stormwater containment, those are all typically addressed at subdivision.
Any other questions or comments? I just got to the map. Which lot is the water retention going to be on?
Lot 2.
Two.
The one in the southwest corner there.
Thank you. Okay.
One more question.
Yeah,
Lynn,
please.
if it's okay, Chair.
Yep.
So there's a concern that the new residents, because they don't have animals themselves, will be concerned with the farming around them. Is that a concern for you as a developer selling these properties?
No,
Okay.
my bigger concern is the football stadium, but
Okay,
just as as far as noise and probably the school kids parking in the subdivision, things like that. I have more concerns with that. When they come out and look at a house, they're gonna see where they're at. They're gonna see that there's the FFA area on the east side, and there's not that many animals on 2200 in this area, so.
Okay. And did we address the fire turn area?
So right now, the fire turn area that we have it in, I don't have the plat with me, but it's the last. Right now, it's in between lots 12 and 13, but as part of what we've been talking about with the county or with the planning staff, I'm going to dedicate, I think it's 30 feet to the north of lot 13 for the future east-west road. And that would be a place where the fire truck could turn around. The pathway right now that's between lots 20 and 21. I put that in at the request of the planning staff to connect to the school pathway, but the school is not going to do a pathway there. So that pathway will probably not be there. We'll take that 30 feet and we'll add like 5 feet to the next 6 lots or something to make those a little bit wider. So. There's not, the school is closed it off. There's no path on the school side, and they've calling it a closed campus. There'll be a fence there, or there already is a fence there with no gate. So
That's something that they're gonna have to change because they requested to have that eliminated and the county commission adamantly required that. So yes, yeah, that's something that it's already been the school district and the county commission. They've already talked about it. So if they don't have the gate there, they're gonna have to put it in.
so we'll leave the path then.
Good. That was because of our good work on the approval of that for the school. And I'm glad to hear that, that's going to go in because it should be there.
so kids can access.
Very good. Commissioners, anything else? Commissioner McCormick? No? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. At this point, commissioners, any discussion? I'll ask for a motion on legislative item 5.1 ZMA 2022-01. I'll ask for a reminder for a motion on item 2022-01. Hmm. There's the staff recommendations on the screen as well.
Number one from the second.
I believe so, unless we've changed a couple of words in here. We've added a line item under forwarding a positive recommendation of the county commission. Otherwise, the staff report is pretty much the same. So if you feel as if something hasn't been addressed, you have a reason to table it or deny it. Obviously, that is under your purview. I know that the applicant would like a recommendation one way or the other, just so they can move forward in this process.
But does the staff recommendations based on the open space? That is correct.
Correct.
I make a motion that we approve file number ZMA 2022-12 with staff recommendation number 2 in our packet, and also including the donation of $2,000 per lot in the subdivision, referring to the letter from Taylor West Weaver Park District. And this recommendation is based on the findings in our packet.
Very good.
Chair, can I make one statement before you ask for a second?
Sure.
On her motion. So when I'm looking at the agenda, the file number is different than what it is on the staff report. I just want to make sure that her motion matches which one it's supposed to be.
It should be 2022-01. That's what it should be. Sorry about that, Commissioner Wicker.
Okay, so I'll adjust my motion to state ZMA 2022-01. And everything else is the same as my
Same.
previous motion.
Okay. Thank you, commissioners. Have a motion. I'll ask for a second.
I'll second.
Have a motion in a second. Commissioner Neville,
Aye.
Commissioner McCormick,
Aye.
Commissioner Clance,
Aye.
Commissioner Wicker,
Aye.
Commissioner Andriotti,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
This one.
Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda. 5.2 ZMA 2022-01, decision on a request for approval. 02, sorry. We'll start over. Item number 5.2 ZMA 2022-02, decision on a request for approval of a zoning map amendment to rezone approximately 29 acres located at approximately 900 South, 4700 West from A1 zone to C1 zone and 01 zone. Mr. Ewers.
Thank you, Planning Commissioners. I'm going to run through the presentation that I gave last month, just to make sure everybody's up to speed on this, and then afterwards just talk about a few different changes that the applicant has discussed with me. So we're talking about this area right here on the map. You guys can see that? Yeah. This is right on the north side of 900 South Street. Originally, the request was for the front 4 acres to be rezoned. We identified that the C1 zone would fit his needs well enough, but the intention really is to have that be a placeholder zone in exchange for, at some point in the time, the property becoming part of the form-based zone that we're working on. The form-based zone, if you well, the form-based zone allows for multiple types of uses, primarily commercial at the street level, but then above and behind might be residential or office space, or a myriad of other kinds of commercial uses could even happen above and behind. But at the street level, it's got to be retail-oriented, commercial, restaurants, sales of goods and so. The applicant was kind of in a rush to get this done, to realize some deadlines that he had. And so as we were discussing, he was comfortable with allowing for the other 19 acres of his property to be rezoned to the O1 zone. Now, if you look at the general plan map, we actually show that the majority of that property underneath the Christmas tree here is O1, with the frontage being mixed-use commercial. And so asking for the front to be C1, right now it's not mixed use commercial, it's just commercial for C1, but we would actually work on a development agreement. And at the very back of your packet, there was the form-based code. We would have a development agreement that essentially said what the form-based code says. So even though in theory on the map it says C1, in principle, they're effectively be governed by the form-based code regulations, which it governs the way buildings need to look, how far away from the street setback they need to be, what the streets need to look like, street parking, pedestrian accessibility, and all that kind of stuff. So let's just blow through some of this here. So architectural requirements, the applicant likes the agrarian appearance that's already adopted in the form-based zone applicable in the Ogden Valley. In fact, if you look through the applicant's images, these are images from the applicant, you can see a lot of those agrarian architectural styles being included. This would be some of the multifamily that could be adjacent, but this actually isn't part of the actual. So just an idea of some of the architectural styling that the applicant is fighting for here.
Charlie, can I interrupt you? Sorry.
Please.
So the existing building, there is an existing building, right?
There is no building at the street front. There is a building further in back on the property.
On what part of what we're approving today, right? Okay.
In the O1 zone. So right.
And that
there.
building's architecture is the same as what they're proposing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's essentially the appearance of a barn.
Yeah, right. Okay,
Yep.
thank you. Sorry.
You got it. Excuse me. Let's see.
I threw you off. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's okay. So one thing that we were proposing as part of the form-based area, form-based zones require street regulating plans. You're actually governing the way that things look from the street as opposed to putting an overemphasis on the uses on the property. So rather than saying this is for houses, this is for commerce, you're saying everything kind of works well together in these areas, as long as they are laid out and look a certain way, they can be more functional. So if you've got, for example, and bad example for this project, but just think about 25th Street. If you got a nightclub at the ground level, you don't want the base from that nightclub keeping somebody who lives upstairs awake. So you want to make sure that that nightclub is sufficiently insulated and has sound dampening to keep that base from keeping the guys upstairs awake. Or girls, whoever it may be. But and so you can have multiple types of uses in one building. You just got to build the building correctly, and that's the intention of this code. Addressing streets and design and connectivity. This is the typical street cross section already in the form-based code. We are adding one more, and you'll see that today in our work session, which has a 3-lane street instead of a 2-lane street with right and left turn pockets. So 4700 would be designed with the 3-lane with right and left turn lane pockets, and then 900 would be 2-way, so 2-lane street. But you got 45-degree angle street parking, you've got curb and gutter and a bumper buffer, bike lane, tree lane, and then a sidewalk, and you can see the buildings there. These sidewalks are 14 feet wide. The intention is that you can have wares for sale out on the sidewalk, encumbering no more than 7 feet of that sidewalk. You always have to have 7 feet open for pedestrians to access through on the public right of way, but it allows street activity. One of the focuses and the emphasis is on emphases on form base is activity on the street. Having great downtowns or great village centers like the West Weaver Village could be, it relies on people being there, and having pedestrian accommodations is important to making people feel safe and getting them out of their car, right? I mean, as opposed to having a Walmart parking lot where you've got people getting out of the car and just flocking to the front of the building. You've got actual things that can happen between the car and the front of that building. And so having a lot of, whether it's entertainment or shopping or whatever at the street level is important. And that's one of the reasons why we're looking at such a wide sidewalk, including the tree. Let's see. So just kind of breezing through those.
I've got a question.
Okay.
And maybe it's a question for later, but where's the garbage cans?
So that's one of the reasons why you need a mid-block alley and internal block accessibility. So
Perfect.
your parking is, more of your parking is going to be inside the block. You have a little bit of parking on the street, but you know, if you've ever gone to 25th Street on a good weekend, you're not getting one of those parking spots. You're parking in the back. So that's where your garbage cans be as well.
And that's where the raw materials would be taken to a restaurant or coffee shop,
Yep.
same place.
Deliveries would be the back there. Yep. And so the internal of the block, getting into and out of the internal block area is important for circulation, to provide deliveries, to store cars. I mean, really, you're looking at the internal of the block is the utility component of your block, as opposed to putting the opposite of this kind of zoning is the Walmart zoning, where you're putting the utility on the outside,
Right.
and you want the pretty stuff to be
You answered
framing the
that. Thank
public right
you.
of way.
Out by the
Perfect.
road.
When you're looking at intersections, whether it's approaching an intersection with pedestrian or bikes, or approaching an intersection with cars, you want to have bulb outs so that your road's narrow. That just naturally sends cues to people who are driving to slow down. It never goes lower than what the lane widths are and what safe travel widths are, but you're shrinking the amount of asphalt that's there.
I hate to interrupt you. Sorry, Charlie, but
Please.
so this is a lot of discussion that we've had with form-based.
Mhm.
And this item that we're looking at tonight is the applicant is, excuse me, asking for C1, right?
Right.
So if I want to make sure I'm getting the gist of the conversation, so we're looking at the C1 with some form-based. Yeah, kind of.
We're calling it C1 just for the sake of the zone that exists. It's
Okay.
form-based.
So then, I guess my question is, and I get, the applicant has his reasons, but we're close on form base.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, when I say close, we had the discussion in the pre-meeting and it seems like we're maybe a meeting away from that possibly.
Yep.
So anyway, didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
Carry on,
it's a
but-
good observation. Trails and trail connectivity. So this is again, assuming that we had about 19 acres of open space to work with. We don't have that anymore. The map I'll show you guys a little bit later today shows the different scaled down version of that. But you just want to make sure these white dashed lines are active transportation facilities that make sure that where you've got extensive distances. Let's back up a little bit. The average person is not willing to walk more than a quarter of a mile to wherever they're going. So from your car to your destination and back again, you shouldn't have more than a quarter mile one way. And so or when you're looking at bus stations, access to trailheads, access to active transportation facilities, your big focus is on making sure that people exist within a quarter of a mile of that. And that helps to cut down on vehicle trips. Otherwise, they got to drive to walk, and it just doesn't make sense if you can have them located next to walk. And so if you have a park there, you want to make sure you're cutting through that block. These blocks are 660 feet wide, just like the Ogden City blocks are, same distances apart. You want to make sure you've got mid-block crossings, because then you got your 330 feet like you do just right out here. You're getting a far better interrelationship between both sides of the roads if you have that. Parks, recreation. So this is the half-mile radius. This is a half-mile radius around the property. That is what our Parks and Recreation component of the plan suggests when we're looking at neighborhood parks. So they say half mile for neighborhood parks, and within a mile, or excuse me, 2 miles of community parks. So We know that there's not a park within half a mile of this, so looking at park space or open space here is going to be important. The applicant still wants to do park space, but the applicant doesn't want to donate it to the park district. He would rather maintain operations and control of the property and make it essentially reserved for the Cherokee Village people who live there. The pathways that are along streets, you can see a cross section here or an example of a cross section. The engineers reminded me that we do have a rolled curb that's part of our cross section for our bigger streets, our residential streets. We'll probably see some high back curb, but on the bigger roads, we're looking at this, and that's when it's not right in the village center. And then mid-block crossings, Mr. Buck presented in his something that's going to look hopefully quite a bit like this. Dark sky, you'll see that we'll discuss that a little bit more tonight, but we want to make sure that that is applicable as well in the Western Weaver area. And so development agreement, the applicant was comfortable going the development agreement route. I think either way, we'll probably need to do a development agreement unless the commissioners are comfortable with just giving them in the C1 zone for the 4 or 5 acres. Given that I'm not quite ready to offer a full analysis and recommendation on just 5-acre rezone. I don't have a positive recommendation for this. I do have a positive recommendation for what's in the packet. And so if you'd like to pass it on with a positive recommendation for what's in the packet, I think that would give the applicant a good feeling of good faith in moving forward. And maybe we'll beat him to the county commission on our form-based code, and he'll be able to just switch over to that at the time. No, there wasn't. Not in this packet. No, yeah, so everybody saw it in the previous packet.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this one in December. And this item was tabled at that meeting.
Yes. Yeah, and so here, let me do this for you. Yeah.
So question on the park space.
Your staff recommendation there.
Sorry.
Here,
I didn't mean to
I was
interrupt
just
you.
pulled up the staff recommendation here for you to see.
Oh, thank you. So, so on the park space, for this application for commercial, for C1, the applicant is not interested in working with the Parks District. They're interested in a park for Cherokee Village.
That's right. Yeah, there's some hesitancy on donating or dedicating the land to the Parks District. For whatever reason, applicant has his reasons. I'm working with him to try and get something done, to try and change his mind on this. This recommendation suggests that there's 19 acres of open space and 4 acres of commercial. So if you were to pass this recommendation, that's what would go to the county commission. Now, what the county commission does with that and what the applicant and the county commission does with that is, a different story. So there may end up being a 5-acre C1 rezone without a development agreement. That's one side of the story, or the other side of the story is the commissioners say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and do this and we like it, and let's get that development agreement recorded as soon as we can.
My concern with the park is that that limits accessibility, at least the conversation we're having tonight at this meeting. It limits, accessibility to the rest of the community. And yeah, I get that on the general plan that this area is, is zoned, for commercial. We've been working on the form-based, which would probably be a better fit. And with that form-based, at least based on the conversations that have been had in the work sessions, there was going to be open park to the park district in that area, a commitment in that direction. I guess my point is that the community's giving a little bit of something up here, even though the general plan does, allow for this kind of a rezone. I feel like the community's, getting kind of a little bit left behind, because now this application that we have before us tonight is not putting that area out as open space to the community, it kind of limits it to whatever, whatever the Cherokee Village will put into their documentation, however they run their, their property there. So that concerns me just a little bit.
Valid concern. I've had the same concern. It's one of the reasons I've pushed back. I told the applicant, I felt like this was slam dunk. I'm sad to see that the offer for as much open space zone. What this does is it says a portion of property will go to the Parks District immediately. I think I said an acre or two. I can't remember. And the other 4 acres will be held in easement, conservation easement by the applicant. So the applicant can run agritourism operation on it. And at the time that the applicant is ready to flip that agritourism operation into some other opportunity, that would trigger the donation of the rest of that property to the Park District. So I thought that was a really good happy medium, getting the applicant what they need, as well as helping the applicant feel like he's got security in future planning. Because I think that's kind of, if I understand where the applicant's coming from, I think that's the cornerstone of his concern is if he gives it up, he loses all opportunity for future planning on that. And so I think he still wants something to help him out with that. But again, my recommendation to you guys, just based on the general plan, is that the rezone, a positive recommendation should come with a requirement for the some land to go to the Park District. I think the county commissioners are on the same page, but dynamics have shifted a little bit, so we'll see what they have to say about that. The general plan is pretty clear.
Commissioners?
Questions? What's the park donation? On the acreage, or is that
It's subjective. You guys get to have a voice in that for sure. So the Park District, through the general plan, the adoption of the general plan, the Park District says that neighborhood parks, so parks within a half mile of every home, needs to be at least on a 5-acre parcel, which is the perfect size because these blocks are 10 acres. The block that this building is on is a 10-acre block. So half of that goes to the park. The other half is reserved for commercial opportunities. Kind of give you a visual on how much space that might provide there. And so 5 acres, I think, is a good number.
I just want to clarify. So the open space that they'd like to keep is for an agro-tourism operation.
Yeah,
And that's why they want to keep it private. So it will be, if I remember right, when they presented before, it will be open to the public, but a portion of it that needs to be production area will be, you won't be able to pass through that, but there'll be portions that are open to the public. So it isn't, I mean, it's private, but it's not a personal park per se. It's open for the public to use.
How do
So
we define open to the public though? Open to the public with a fee to access it for their agritourism, or?
so that's one of the reasons why I'm advocating for the Park District to have it, because those are questions we wouldn't have to ask if the Park District took it over. The applicant has represented to me that they do want to have open access to the public. But until we have something in writing that says exactly what that is, whether there are fees, whether there's a fence, whether there's a gate, whether there's a block at the gate, we'd have to have a development agreement that spells that out.
because weren't they talking, if I'm getting this right, it was kind of like a more of a farmer's market type of a feel is what they're hoping for.
So the agritourism operation would definitely have a farmer's market kind of feel.
Association to it.
Yeah, the master plan that the developer has provided does provide like a park and play area
Mhm.
as well. So it's not just a field area. There are recreational amenities that the applicant does want to put in there.
But essentially that's an open space, not necessarily the park in the general terms of a park. It's not a place.
Not
for-
developed for,
Yeah, it's
for
not.
like sporting events or anything.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah, or even picnics, probably, for that matter.
Right. So my
So-
my recommendation is based on just the 4 or maybe 5 acres of property
'cause
going
that's
to
all we're-
commercial, because that's all we're looking at.
Mhm.
And 5 acres or 4 acres of park space is more than compensatory for 5 acres of commercial space. Once you've got the property just adjacent to it, going for commercial uses or higher density residential uses, we're gonna have a lot more developers or property owners who can pay into providing improvements to that.
We'll get the land
park.
first, and then as we develop out, we'll get the money for the improvements.
Now, the applicant has suggested that improvements to the portion of the park that he wants to retain control of, he's happy to put those in. But I mean, if I were in his shoes, I would say, gosh, if I'm donating 5 acres, I'm not putting improvements in too.
Right.
And so I would expect the county to work with other developers to do that.
Let me back up and make sure that we're all on the same page, and mostly me, because I think everybody else here is way smarter than I am. But right now, the way that this is zoned is for 1 acre lots.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, so then, but on our general plan, it can go to 1/3 acre lots. But in this area, it can actually go beyond that.
Yeah.
Which can lead to some mixed use commercial. And or possibility of form base when we get that. So, yeah, I guess, you know, kind of making Charlie's point, I just feel like the community is giving something up here for this 5 acres of commercial. And I think the community should get something back from it. My opinion.
Yeah, I possibly, as long as they're comfortable with doing the donation.
But that could be our recommendation.
Yeah, that can be a recommendation. The other thing that you need to address, which the staff report recommendations do, is what about transferable development rights? If there's a possibility for them to get some residential uses on that commercial property as well, how many should that be? How should we get that done? Now, I had written in the staff report. Sorry, let me flip back and forth here.
So you're talking about flipping it to mixed use instead of just commercial.
That's right.
Well, we've set a standard. They put additional housing on, that's where we get the extra $1,000 per unit.
Yep.
And that goes.
That's right. So that's the form-based code has a number of uses that would be allowed on the property, and including a mandatory requirement for the lower level to be built street facing in a manner that can be used for retail at the time that a retail market is actually created in that area. You need a lot more homes to get a good retail market going. But they can have residential as well. And so with the donation for parks, he mentioned that he is willing to do a monetary donation for parks at this point, but sorry, trying to say 2 things at once. Let me get to that one in just a second. If we were to apply the form-based ordinance that's currently written to the property, he will have the right to transfer development rights to the property. He will also have the right to have the property calculated on how much base density he has. So number one, he's got 23 acres. And if we just say 1 acre development, even though it's 40,000 square feet, 1 acre development on the gross developable area, it's got 23 residential dwelling units. And so we would just say, all right, here's your 4 or 5 acres of commercial space that runs with 23 development rights, residential developments. But if you do that straight out, the 23 residential development rights, and the rest of the property isn't zoned 01, then there's still development potential in the rest of that. So you just got to, if you want to try and help the applicant in making some concessions, we need to address, all right, exactly how much of your property are you reserving as open space, whether it's park space or not. Let's take that calculation and let's say that's your development right, and the potential to be transferred over to your commercial areas. But no more than that. And then if he wants to go more than that, he could go and buy development rights from other areas.
And then additional.
Yep, if it's 5 acres of parkland and 5 acres of commercial, it would be 10. Yep. Yeah, if you're comfortable with that recommendation.
I got an administrative question. So as this approaches the commission, whether it's denied or approved by this commission for a recommendation, who signs off before the rezone can go through? What entities have to sign off?
County Commission. The County Commission is the only entity that has control over rezone. So everything that we do is in the form of a recommendation, whether we're asking the park district for a recommendation or water, sewer, whatever. It's all recommendation. County Commission has full autonomy and control over setting that policy direction.
Okay. Okay.
Charlie, can I just ask a question just for purposes of the planning commissioners here? Is the applicant's application considered complete by staff as far as secondary and culinary water are concerned? Just because I don't have the packet in front of me, but as I look in Frontier, I didn't know if that was.
Yeah, so there's not a big discussion in Frontier on water and on sewer. We do have application requirements that address that. The applicant has suggested that he will make sure water and sewer is there, and that is a requirement of getting the building permit or doing subdivision. We know that it's been a little bit of a challenge on properties right next to this that the applicant's been working on or has worked on in the past. My opinion on this, the code requires some kind of a statement or a narrative on what's going to happen with utilities. The statement of the narrative that the applicant will bring them from the appropriate utility providers is that. And if this goes through, it gives the applicant a little bit more collateral to lean against to provide those kind of a little bit more money to open up a little bit of cash. At the end of the day, our ordinances are pretty dang clear. In order to get your subdivision approved, so this didn't apply to the neighboring subdivisions or the neighboring property and the property that was subdivided just adjacent to that. This rule didn't apply to those because they went through the process before our new water ordinance was adopted 2 years ago. Today, when the applicant goes to subdivide the property, regardless of the rezone or not, they have to hook into a culinary water entity that is providing and will provide service to the property. So that's Taylor West Weaver, they're the district there. And for secondary, we actually just got the other day an expansion map from Hooper. And so their intention is to provide pressurized irrigation on that side. So the code requires the applicant to hook into both of those utility entities.
The problem with the private utility, the secondary water system in this case, is the fact that the applicant, any applicant, has to have water, has to have ownership of water in order to have service from that secondary unit.
That's right.
Or facility. So, you know, we need to keep that in mind as we go through these processes, that these are not districts for secondary water in Western Weber County. These are private water companies. So, and in order to get into those, well, specifically Hooper, you have to own water. There's another company that offers secondary that you can buy directly into. But either way, they're private. There's not a, just because I'm building here, I got water.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And to the extent, so the code is written to say you have to connect into the utility provider that can and will serve. So if there's a utility provider that won't serve because they're capped on how much water they have, for example, then the applicant has the ability to pursue their own secondary water at that point.
How out of question is an overlay zone for this? For
This is
temporary purposes.
It's actually essentially what the development agreement is.
Okay.
And we're not calling it that, but I mean, calling a spade, you might as well call it.
So if the agreement goes away, then the zone goes away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's my whole point of the overlay zone.
We could write the ordinance to say that it reverts back to the A1 zone.
Okay. Because that's a concern here, is that, you know, this is maybe we can come to some sort of an agreement as to how to motion this and get it through, get it approved. But at the same time, if this all falls apart, then the zoning should go back to what it was and not changed in the general plan. There'll still be, you know, ample availability to apply again.
Yep.
And try the process again.
You got it.
So, okay, commissioners?
So I'm not exactly clear, Charlie. Do we have water or don't we have water?
To get a rezone, you don't have to prove water.
So we don't, that's not our concern. Is that
Not-
what you're saying?
You can make it a concern. If let's see. If somebody is proposing to, I'm gonna be extreme here, and a little crazy. If someone is proposing to build on a small corner of the moon, but Weber County has a jurisdiction over that, well, we know that feasibility is very, very, very unlikely to allow for water in that kind of circumstance. And so in those kinds of cases, it would probably behoove us to not zone any portion of the moon for higher density. If there is access to water, if there's water facilities in the general area, we already have thousands of acres already zoned for development without any of those landowners proving water feasibility. So this is really no different than that. And so it's not necessary now. They won't get a subdivision approved without water.
So you're saying at the subdivision level.
Yep.
Or the commission puts their stamp on it.
That's right. And that's actually a really important consideration because this subject has come up a couple of times with the planning commission. In order for the financial world to start, well, you know, this lending money, they need to know that the county is comfortable with the change. And so that ordinance, that rezone needs to be passed. Oftentimes, and that may not be the case in Western Weaver, but oftentimes in order to get a will serve letter from a utility provider, you've got to pay your share fees, or at the very least have a commitment to do so. And so you kind of get a little bit of a which one comes first, the chicken or the egg? And the answer in this case is the zoning. The zoning says this is the potential for the area. This isn't what's approved. This is the potential for the area. And then once they come in and apply for their development, then, you know, that's at that point, their financiers are all already lined up because they know that we can't say no once that development comes in. They just have to check the boxes.
Charlie, to Mr. McCormick's point, just because my office has been so involved with making sure that, or so involved with complaints about planning commissioners not necessarily abiding by the land use code. Can I just read what it requires in a rezone application here for
Please.
water purposes, just so
Please.
we're clear on this? This is in 102-5-4 application requirements, and it does just say, as far as water is concerned, if the land is located within an existing or future service area of a local water or sewer service provider, a letter of acknowledgement and conditions of future service.
Okay, that makes sense. Which I don't know that we have a letter of acknowledgement, and so we'd have to get that. So technically, I guess the answer is the application may not be fully complete.
Yeah.
I better go back through the documents and sort them out.
Thank you, Liam. That cleared up my administrative question that I had earlier.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't think it means that they have to have it before you offer a recommendation, but the code requires that to exist before any final action is taken.
Director, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think we would definitely need that before the county commission could make a recommendation.
Planning commission or
on that.
county commission?
Definitely the county commission, but
And
go ahead.
and I'm just going off code language here because I want this to be very clear for the record and for everybody involved. For per code, it says when a rezoning application meets the requirements outlined in 102-5-4 of this chapter, which is that section I just read to you. And when the application is deemed complete by the planning director or designee, the application will be processed in the following manner. And that goes to planning commission review and recommendation, and then county commission review and decision. So just keep that in mind. It does say the zoning application meets the requirements outlined in 102-5-4. And it progresses.
So we're saying that it does not meet the requirements as of right now, right?
one of the requirements that is required among many is that if it's located within an existing or future service area of a local water sewer service provider, a letter of acknowledgement and conditions of future service. So unless that can be deemed complete by planning staff and the director, then it would technically be incomplete.
So that would have to be, if we were to take any action on this, that would have to be conditioned into the motion. Is that fair?
Yeah, you could condition that in, right, that occur at some point in time.
So what all that means when you put it all together is the applicant isn't entitled to a decision. It doesn't mean you can't make a recommendation. He's just not entitled to. If we were to go through and dot the i's and cross the t's, and the applicant, didn't get the decision that he wanted to, and he were to try and sue for whatever reason, technically the application is incomplete, and so the applicant's not entitled to a decision. And so it's just one more argument when, if that were to happen. As far as conditioning your recommendation for approval, if you're ready for that, do it. If not, table it and we can go to another meeting.
I have a couple comments, Charlie. Sorry, one's kind of long. First one, just on what we've just talked about. Not that I don't feel like it has to be this way, but I feel like it's better for us to send something to the commissioners that is ready and solid instead of I feel like if we're going to do our due diligence, it's to have everything ready. If we're recommending something, we're recommending it. And so they're ready to be prepared to just review it how it is, right? So that's my feeling on that in general. Not that I'm completely against giving a recommendation in favor or against, but I have those feelings. Secondly, as far as your first presentation on his first proposal, as far as I understood it, I liked it. I thought it was a great thing, but I knew that the rest of the planning commission had concerns from a previous meeting, work session, right? That I was not in attendance for. So we tabled it in order to continue that work session, which did we not get to it on the agenda? I know that he left before we were able to get to it on the agenda last time for that work session, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is the rest of you as planning commissioners, do you still have the same concerns with this new proposal that you did with the previous proposal? Is that fair to ask you that?
Well, I think it's fair. In my mind, it's those requirements for water and everything's gonna have to stand either way. I like the first one because I like this form-based code. I've said that before. And I think that it may add a lot to the community out there, but at the same time, if we give him a rezone and the development plan, maybe we can do the same thing. I don't know. Just the thought, this particular applicant's been here many times, and sometimes in my old brain these days, I can't keep up with it all. But I think that if I'm hearing it right, and I do agree, when we make a recommendation, it pretty much should have the dots and T's crossed. I mean, as good as we can do with the due diligence. But even if it goes up there with some of these things, leaves here with some of those things still open, it won't go anywhere till it passes the muster with the planning department. And if I heard it right, does that come back to us then before it goes to the county commission? It'd go to you and then to the county commissioners?
Yeah, it wouldn't, if you approved this, it wouldn't come back before you.
Okay.
But if you, one thing that you have done with this is you've tabled it and say you want to look at the form-based code and then have that come back before you. And per state code it indicates that when an applicant submits an application, it needs to be approved in a timely manner.
Right.
And so that's where that becomes a little subjective on what a timely manner is. If, in my opinion, if you were to table this again, it starts to get in that gray area of, are we addressing a timely manner? But, if you approve the form-based code, in the next meeting, and then we're able to get this back on there, that's kind of getting into a gray area.
Yeah, and I really struggle with tabling things because it's not only time consuming for everybody, it costs money to somebody, and lately it's big money. And I agree. I think that, to me, I'm just wrestling in my mind is I like that form base where we control what those buildings look like from the street. I really like that. And but we don't have that quite done yet. And that's why I asked about the development plan, because he came in here, if I remember right, talking about form-based code. He was good with it, good with the streets, good with everything else. And so in my little mind, I'm trying to think that if we give him what he wants in the development agreement, maybe we can get the same thing. I mean, does that make sense or no?
Well, and that's what that's why we've done it this way, is because we feel that if we do this, we're still going to be getting what we're getting out of the form-based code. It's just moving him along
Right.
a little faster, or else we would not be recommending this positive recommendation, because we feel that this is complying with the general plan as well as the form-based code that we're proposing before you right now is complying with the general plan. So that's why you see both of these happening at the same time, because we feel that they both could be meeting the intent of the general plan.
And commissioners, I apologize for the water and sewer checkbox that I didn't check off. I like Commissioner Neville, when he was proposing to rezone 19 acres to open space and some of that be part of a public park. I wanted to get this in front of you guys as quickly as we could before circumstances changed for him, because I know he was under some time constraints. And so I actually got it in front of you guys probably a month in advance of how it should have been. Probably should just be saying it today for the first time.
I appreciate that. I do button things up, but I think there are certain things can't button up. Like we're here with these conditions, they're coming to us trying to figure out what exactly they need to provide. Yeah, the water and sewer acknowledgement would probably be a great thing that's easy to do ahead of time, and in the future that would be great. But I think there are going to be. I think the important part, because that is something that maybe it wasn't done before, but at least gives them their recommendation. Sure, we're really, but when those conditions get just definitely.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think they were ready to come to us.
No.
I think there's definitely a balance. Important to think of.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah.
You'll see when I'm not ready to recommend approval, you'll see those big conditions. Yeah, because I don't really like to recommend denial on anything. And so, yeah, approve this as long as these 100 things are taken care of and they comply with the code and don't commit murder. But in this case, like I mentioned in our last meeting, development agreement, I like to list off just some bullets in the conditions of approval, just to set the framework and the basic makeup of that development agreement, which you guys don't see the development agreement, but at the very least, make sure these items are in there. Yep.
You know what bothers me most about this? We can make the decision whichever way it goes, positive, negative, or table. But what happens, and where my mind gets fuzzy, is what happens at the next level. And that's because I don't have the time to follow these things through to the commission and see whether they get approved or not. The reason I bring that up is because of the fact that it would be nice, and I realize that every circumstance is different, but it would be nice to kind of see how things trend with the commission. Now, having said that, we do have a new commissioner that just was sworn in earlier this month or this week, possibly. And so we really, we have a little bit of a curve there, but I'd really like to see how these things go through after we get done with them, because, you know, we can put findings, we can condition the heck out of these things, and we can do all kinds of stuff, but in the end, we never really know what was agreed to or what's not agreed to. And it makes us as community members living in the areas that we live in a little bit responsible to the folks that live there. And then when we get questions asked of us, we're like, I don't know, you know, and that's not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry that it happens, because I don't have any more time than anybody else does to follow this stuff through, but I certainly would like to know what happens to these kind of things, especially these ones that are on a revolving door and just keep coming back. What actually ends up happening with them. That's a whole different subject and a deeper well than we're in. I apologize, but that's my feeling toward this one and many others that we've done in my time on the commission. So, thank you.
Typically, I try to bring back to you if they go against your approval in the planning commission meetings under director's comments. Most of the time they don't, so I don't. But if you'd like, I can always bring back anything that they approve in Western Weber County so that you're aware of that.
That'd be great.
If you'd like
You know,
me to do that, I can just, you know, whether it's approved or they change something, I can bring anything back to you. If you'd prefer me to do that, I'd be glad to.
I would, for me, anything that either gets denied that we approve, that we forwarded a positive recommendation for, or anything that gets changed.
Okay.
That's what I'd like to see. I don't know how the other commissioners feel.
Okay. Yeah, and I can always do that, and I typically try to, because usually not much ever gets changed. It usually gets approved how you give your recommendation, probably about 85% to 90% of the time.
Great.
Yeah, the commissioners value your recommendation, and that's why they've appointed you to be on the planning commission, because they value your opinion.
Thank you, Director. I'd appreciate that
Sometimes
information.
to emphasize that, sometimes it's late. I'm trying to find the right words. Well, I was just thinking a little bit annoying when they do, because sometimes it's just a small nuance, but they're like, well, what does the planning commission think about this? Well, it'll be another 3 weeks before we talk to them next. But we just did this with the short-term rental ordinance, and they wanted the Ogden Valley Planning Commission to review it a couple of times. So yeah, we hear all the time, well, what does the planning commission think? Well, I don't want to go against the planning commission. So your opinions have a lot of weight.
Chair, I just wanted to clarify the question in front of us and make sure I'm clear. So how many acres do they want to rezone right now?
5.
They like to, so is it possible for us to ask for an additional 5 acres when they're only asking for 5? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, so the amount of discretion that ultimately the county commission has on this is very wide. The county commission can say, you know what, we are going to rezone your property, and it's going to be to a completely different zone. We're going to rezone your entire property to the O1 zone with no commercial. That's the kind of discretion the commissioners have on this, and so with or without the applicant. And so if you would like to see the county commissioners to think about something just beyond just the 5 for commercial, yeah, for sure recommend that, because I think the county commissioners, they'll kind of weigh out the fairness question as well, because they're very much fairness and balance oriented. But I think that knowing that there isn't another park in the area, and the master plan says development needs to be park needs to be included within half mile. And so if this developer doesn't provide it, somebody needs to provide it somewhere.
So in your recommendations, I'm looking at these conditions. We've got 1 acre right now and 4 acres later, and then all 5 acres need to be continuous or
Contiguous.
contiguous, so
Yeah.
connected.
Yeah, do I say contiguous?
Yeah,
You do say contiguous. I said continuous.
Oh,
but
sorry.
You are right.
I didn't mean to correct you. I was sorry.
No, you're right. Contiguous, which is different. So, but the 1 acre has to be connected to the 4 acres. Is that
Yep.
the way we're okay. So we're telling them we want 5 acres, but only one of the acres has to be developed right now.
Yep.
And then The other 4 acres would be part of the development agreement. We have residential units that are permitted, and so how did we get 23 out of 5 acres?
Well, so the 23, again, these
Oh, this was based on the other
23
application.
total acres, yeah, and this 23 here, I just added in here because it was a correction I had to make in the meeting. I
Okay.
had 12 originally, I meant 20.
So we would be giving them 10
10.
based on the 5 and 5.
Mhm.
And the rest of these conditions found in this packet would be the same if we approved this for just the 5 acres.
Yeah, and again, it wasn't until yesterday that I realized he wanted it on the agenda, so I haven't put a full evaluation into it. But from my recollection of the evaluation that I put into the 23 acres, yes, if we're going 5 and 5, with
Okay.
4 acres of that not being developed, just being held for a while, I think that'd be more than fair, and I think everything else still applies.
And that's covered in these 7 conditions, correct?
Yes.
Okay, is there any other things we want to add to that?
Water and sewer.
Water and sewer.
Got it in red.
Oh, there we are.
Where's the rest of your findings at, or what do you have on the rest of your findings, Charles?
No more conditions.
Compliance with the Western Weaver General Plan, promote health, safety, and welfare, in implementing certain parts of the general plan. It has a higher likelihood of providing more affordable housing. And then it will create a village node. Or at least help facilitate that.
Okay. All right, commissioners, how do you feel? Oh, 29.
I'm okay putting this into a motion with a development agreement. But that was because we only 5 commercial, and we're asking him to include an additional 5 to get.
Make it easy.
We're talking about the whole 29 acre parcel, correct?
At this point, if we go the way I think Commissioner Wickerner is thinking, we're only talking about 10 acres. right
Okay.
now.
All right.
Now he's gonna need to identify for us what portion that 10 is. We know the front 5 is
Mhm.
commercial.
And the other 5, as long as they're contiguous to each other.
Okay.
Could be anywhere in that 23 acres and fill our needs. So that's not something I think we need to specify, as long as it's.
I'd
Connected.
recommend asking for all 5 acres to just be almost a mirror in terms of geometry, because if you're gonna get soccer fields, you're not gonna want like a linear park that goes around. the
Oh,
community.
so they need to be continuous. And what other distinction would you use, you say?
Just mirror the same geometry as the commercial rezone.
Write that down.
I'm writing things with you, so.
Geometry.
Pick a shape.
Okay, so we want to mirror the geometry of the commercial zone. Okay. And then we don't end up with, maybe he buys 5 acres somewhere else and makes that a park, and it's not even remotely close to it.
So again, for my naiveness, if we're asking for additional 5 acres that the applicant is unaware of, because I don't see him in the room, is that something that we still put forth to commission without even discussing with him, or how does that work?
Yeah, he wanted a meeting today, so regardless
Okay.
of.
I
He-
don't,
he
we
didn't
don't
seem
really
very
want a park
optimistic.
smaller than 5 acres. 5 acre park, and he wants 5 acres of commercial, and going from an A1 to a commercial, I think that's putting into that commercial land. I'm not a developer, but I don't know, it's a proposal I'm willing to make.
So I'm assuming that if he does not like that, he can go to the commissioners in that hearing and speak against it, right? Okay.
Yeah, technically, after the planning commission makes a recommendation, the whole thing could be thrown out the window and the commissioners can do something different. Like we mentioned, they very rarely do that. But there's a potential that we come to some other arrangement or make the commissioners make concessions above and beyond what the planning commission wants.
Okay.
But it's good to stick to your guns because it's, the commissioners want an honest recommendation from us.
As always, thanks for the education.
Yeah, no problem. I'm here all night. Till 8:30.
Misery loves company. All right. Commissioners, any other comments or questions? Okay. Well, then, I think we've come to that time. I'll ask for a motion. This is going to be a monster.
Chair, I will attempt a motion.
Cool.
I motion that we approve item ZMA 2022-02, decision on a rezone from A1 to C1 on our packet with the following conditions or recommendations on, oh yeah.
Recommendations is fine.
With the recommendations and the following conditions and findings. Let's see. I'm going to read these just because it's interesting. That a mutually agreeable development agreement executed between the applicant and the developer be recorded to the property. That at least 1 acre of land located close to the commercial area and with access to public street is donated to the park district or is donated to the park district or other mutually agreeable entity. At least 4 acres continuous to the 1 acre park and mirror of the 5 acre commercial property. And configured in a manner to provide optimal future park area is reserved for donation to the park district or other mutual agreeable entity at a time the rest of the acreage is converted to a different use. This time will be delineated or in the development agreement. That up to 10 residential units are permitted either directly above or behind the street level commercial space and within the same building. Greater if the additional density is transferred to the property from other property. I don't know about the rest of that. I should keep it.
So in the general plan, we do identify a TDR transfer area.
Oh, right. Okay. In the general plans, TDR open space preservation designated area transfers should be incentivized at a rate of 3 units per 1 unit transferred. That the street regulation plan as provided in Exhibit E of the report. Exhibit E of the December 13th report. Or planning commission packet is implemented through the development agreement.
Put an asterisk on that and as modified for 10 acres instead of 23 acres.
Oh, and modified for 10 acres instead of 23 acres. That buildings are constructed to a zone 4 or better building efficiency standard. That the proposal is in compliance with standards applicable to the mixed use commercial streets in the new town Eden area of the form-based zone, section 104-22 of the Weber County Code. The street fronts along 900 South, 4700 West, and 4600 West should all be designed and constructed to the same standard as found in that section, except however 4700 West shall be provided with sufficient width to allow a center turn lane and right turn pockets. And that a water and sewer acknowledgement letter is provided for the area by local water provider. This is based on the findings that the proposal is compliance. Proposal is in compliance with the Western Weber General Plan. The proposed rezone will promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the Weber County public by implementing certain parts of the Western Weber General Plan. The proposal has a high likelihood of providing better housing affordability, and the proposal will initiate the creation of a village node as provided in the general plan.
Great. And I'm not trying to be picky, Commissioner Wicker, but I'm just going to go back and make sure that we know that it's contiguous on that item where it's mentioned on item line 3.
Yes, and so the condition to provide or do a just the park is contiguous and the 5 acres of parkland is contiguous and mirror of the 5-acre commercial zone.
Perfect. Okay. All right. I have a motion. Did you get that, June? Okay, all right. So I have a motion and I will ask for a second and then we can discuss, or do we have to discuss before the second?
You can discuss and then have a second.
Okay, any discussion, commissioners, on the motion? Okay.
I'm sorry. Right by conditions where Charlie's typed in 10-acre, but did we, that red box, was that part of what you said at the beginning? Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, by the time we got to the end, I couldn't remember, so.
Could I request one minor modification? That the 5-acre park space is rezoned to the O1 zone. So it is a 10-acre rezone, not just a 5-acre rezone.
So do we have to go back and redo the motion or do an adjustment to it? Or at this point with discussion, we can add to the motion?
Good, where it hasn't been seconded.
Okay, so add to the conditions that the 5-acre park is rezoned to the O zone. And the other question I have is they'll do the transfer of the rights, but they also do the form condition rights. How would we do that? Parks district.
Oh, you mean pay in,
That's into. They're not transferring it. Other than. Other than transfer.
No, that one, yeah.
All right, commissioners.
in fact, if they did transfer more in, we would probably ask them at the point that they do to pay the $2,000 per unit.
To the park district.
That's what I was-
All right, okay. I think we have a motion. I know we have a motion and I will now ask for a second to that motion.
I'll second it.
Have a motion in a second. Commissioner Neville.
Aye.
Commissioner Clontz,
Hi.
Commissioner Andriotti,
Aye.
Commissioner Wicker,
Aye.
Commissioner McCormick.
Aye.
Chair votes no. Motion passes 5-1. Thank you. And at this juncture, I'm going to ask for a 5-minute break. And then we'll come back and pick up with public comments not on the item, or excuse me, not on the agenda. So let's take 5. Thank you.
And commissioners, I'm going to need to be excused and Charlie will be handling the rest of the meeting.
You're gonna owe us a few more dinners if you're gonna keep leaving Charlie in charge.
complimenting you over there. So. I actually thought that.
Sister and. About like. She needs.
Night, Director. Say something that's out of whack that left us down. Yeah.
Turn this around.
It's kind of my. Just.
Where did they go to eat?
Usually I've been pretty good, and I am not. I know.
I just.
That's a good news for them. Something compelling. Yeah.
And then he looks over and he goes, "Oh, he is here." I thought he was. He came up after you. All right,
Yes, sir.
All right. Sorry, folks. And that was a much needed break. And I don't know if it got any cooler in here while we were gone because this was like an oven up here. I'm not sure how it is out there, but man. Oh, okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and reconvene our meeting. And we left off on item number 6. Public comment for items not on the agenda. Okay. I think you folks are probably on a work session of our agenda. Okay, next item is item number 7, remarks from the planning commissioners. Commissioners, any remarks that we haven't already made? News from afar or a near? Okay.
Don't look at me.
You're a gossip. All right.
I don't have any.
All right. Next item is our planning director report, and almost like Rick, Charlie, go ahead.
Charlie, could you speak in your mic?
Sure can, thank you. Sorry, June. So now short-term rentals are still restricted to the same zones that they were otherwise allowed in, which they're not allowed in Western Weaver right now, till you get some more commercial zones out there. And so it really doesn't affect you guys yet.
Good. Anything else, or is that's the highlight?
That's the highlight.
Okay.
Can I add in a reminder, February 23rd, your appreciation dinner?
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. Hope everybody put in their RSVP for that. You heard the lady. We know who runs this outfit. She sits right over there. All right. Anything else, June? No, thank you. Okay. Liam, anything from legal?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are now going to adjourn to our work session. Item number 1, a discussion on mixed-use office residential development located on the corner of 3500 West, 3300 South. And Mr. Rick Skadden and Miss Leslie Clifton, excuse me, are our presenters. So.
You guys can just give you something you want to look at would be helpful.
Sure, that'd be great.
What's up on the screen?
Okay.
Commissioners, thanks for allowing us time tonight to come and discuss this with you. We have, to give you a little background, we're working on the property here on the corner, 3300 South, 3500 West, just south of Kingsville Elementary. There's 7.5 acres there that on your future land use map is mixed use commercial. What we're trying to put together is a plan to come in with a MPD overlay in the area. I want to give some background to the area of what's going on there. You're probably aware, so if I'm being redundant of what you know, you can cut me off. First of all, 3500 West has been widened and completed. West Haven City is working through WACOG and they are widening 3300 West South right now to 3500 West and have future plans to go to the west down to 4700. I currently have property to the I'd say south, a little bit to the east, where we're developing 75 acres over there and worked through West Haven City with the master development agreement for that. In that plan, you will find on the back, there's a map with a road on it. In our project over on the acreage, we donated 8 acres to West Haven City to advance their road. They plan to come from Midland Drive and 3600 South all the way down to that corner. And if you see the map of our proposed project, you can see a slight corner section of that taken off because the city is already in agreement with our seller for that property as well. That's going to be a 5-lane road through there.
Rick?
Yes.
Is this the page you're talking about?
Okay, so if I may.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think, sorry, I'm not in the chair, but. Yeah.
Anticipate being done in 2 to 3 years in our conversations with the city.
Eliminates going up to Midland where it connects currently.
Right.
They ultimately, okay.
Yes. And West Haven City is currently in the process of buying properties along that road. Like I say, our project, we traded density for the road to them, and it worked out really nice. So the future of that is coming along. West Haven City invited me. They're in discussion with Kroger as we speak of a grocery store going into that area. Kroger was interested in rooftops. That's what brings people like that to the area. Hey, I'm a Taylor boy, born and raised. I was born on 3500 West and stayed there a lot of my life. So I'm very familiar with the area, and I know what challenges are faced in the area. But if Kroger comes in and they're very interested in the rooftops as a draw for. I also have information where UTA has future, I'll read it exact, what they're calling it. Maybe I read it from somebody. They have future plans for, they're increasing their bus traffic, their transit project list, this enhanced bus service from 3500 West and Midland Drive all the way to the county line. So there's future transit plan for the area. And there's a lot of, like I say, with the increased size of roads and improvements in the area. We named this project Canesville Crossing because I kind of see it as a transitional area for what's going on to go to the west for different type products. But with that future road and the road improvements, I believe this project could sustain, the roads could sustain that kind of growth. I put some, so the buildings you see, the white buildings are some buildings we build on Antelope Drive. That's a project that has been highly successful for us. And we plan on commercial of, that would have a rural feel to it. It was interesting, the pictures earlier showed the hold on, silo, good night. The silo has been a hit. That's actually an office space that people meet in and different things. And we've met with planning a couple times. And let me give you a little background. We were instructed to meet with West Haven. I've met with them a couple of times. Staff was really behind it and liked it, but they said there's not a chance West Haven City Council would go for this project. So we've approached staff here, met a couple of times, and they instructed us to schedule. We've met with 2 of your commissioners at the time, and your new one coming in, Sharon Bolos, we met with her.
Question.
Yes.
So you're not in West Haven?
No.
You're still in the county?
Still in the county.
You're contiguous to West Haven? Do you
Yes.
touch?
Yes. To the east. Yeah. Well, I think there's one in between to the south that's still in the county.
The other side, which other side? Where the school is?
There is a commercial
Yeah,
project
that is
on the
West-
north side of us.
That's West Haven.
That is in West Haven,
Yeah.
interestingly enough, yeah.
Charlie, can you, sorry, can you bring up the annexation map for West Haven? Not where where the boundaries are for the city of West Haven around this property so that everybody can see. So what are you proposing for that corner?
Well, right on the corner, there's a little over 1,000 feet of commercial frontage that will shape in the shape of an L. It'll come along 3,500 west and turn and go east on 3,300 south, up to the point where the project across the street will line up driveways with that so that it's a more seamless intersection type. And then everything east of that would be multifamily housing.
Just to clarify, where were you, is the Kroger store looking at part of what you're proposing here?
Next to us,
Next to you, okay.
in the West Haven city boundary.
To the, next to you towards the.
It would be to the
east?
southeast.
So, okay. So
They require 17 acres. But they're, in that meeting, they stated they were 3 to 4 years out. But they're looking seriously at the area.
How many residences are you anticipating?
To be determined by design, because, you know, our goal is to have an architecturally pleasing product for the area. It could be 150 to 200 doors. If I may.
Oh,
Yeah.
Gardens one.
so you
Right
use a
in this area
mouse?
here.
So it is right in this.
Sorry, I'm just noticing this map doesn't have 3,300 South line on it. It just has a. Yeah.
Confusing. Right next to where that.
Yeah.
You'll see too, some of the things in your general plan, on one of the areas, I included, because one of our discussions with staff was the outdoor lighting and not being a public nuisance for people. So on many of the projects we've done, there'll be a photometric done and all the tests and design of the engineered for the lights to make sure they're not shining in anybody's windows. So we'll handle that.
So, commissioners, any questions?
We're just looking for feedback to put a plan together.
We don't have anything quite this dense in, JD Ranch isn't this quite this dense for the mass land area, is it?
Remind me how many units?
Well, 150 to 200, meaning we realize that we're going to have to make adjustments along the way. We could fit 200, you know.
And how many acres?
7.5.
Yeah, so no, JDC was 200 and something and they got 700 units. So I think they were like 225 and they got 725 units. So it's more dense than that.
Yeah.
But as far as the density goes, that's what we're here to make. Where do we start? What do we?
I'm a little disappointed that West Haven doesn't want to talk about it, but I know that they're in a politically anti-growth mode at the moment, so
If I
doesn't
may,
surprise me.
Ms. Bolos was she was, of the three, she was probably the most keen to the project. She feels like the area needs it. Their young people can stay in the area and live out there. Plus it was with me. of that sentiment.
Right.
Is this something where the form-based code could be applied?
Well, I thought about that a little bit, but with it being right on the border of West Haven, it gets a little challenging because really the goal is not for anything that's form-based code to always be unincorporated. If we do such a good job at our jobs, then, you know, the cities won't need to take it over, and then we'll always have unincorporated urbanized development. So really our goal is to put ourselves out of business in terms of the land use controls. If we do a good job on a project like this and we make it well worth West Haven's time and effort to annex them in, they will annex them in because they're going to see the cash registers and the retail base that's coming out of those commercial spaces.
The street transition might be form-based code going from standards to the.
Now, we can, so creating a street regulating plan, yeah, we're trying to figure out, all right, how.
Where do we transition? How?
That's exactly right. And where you got a hard line where they're saying one side is one thing and the other side is another thing, it's not going to flow very well. It could, so an applicant who is annexed into the city with a form-based zone applied to them would be taking that form-based zone to the city with them. Now, the city can always de-zone them. They could zone them to something else, but they would have the entitlements under that form base. And so that would be able to stay on in perpetuity applied to the property as long as the property is built and all that. And so if the applicant were to rezone and actually build the development and then West Haven took it over, the zone essentially doesn't really matter because it's already built. So development agreement would time out and they just have non-conforming uses at that point. So even if West Haven came in and said, we're zoning you to the O1 zone, they can't take away what has already been executed.
Right.
So as long as it's not abandoned. And so I don't know. I mean, this may be a way to help. I don't want to I don't want it to sound like we're talking down to anyone in West Haven. It's just a little bit of different mentality. And I think there's a little bit of short-sightedness that's not focused on, as focused on the future. I think a lot of folks in some of these more rural cities, incorporated areas, they look to Ogden to provide that urbanized core. And you know, it doesn't belong in their neighborhoods. We're seeing things just a little bit differently. We wouldn't have put it on the map if we didn't think it wasn't appropriate. The challenge that this poses is, as much as the county commissioners might say that they can be supportive of it, it does put them at direct odds with the legislative body of West Haven City. And we know from our experience with JDC Ranch that Plain City is even more dug in their resolve that they will never, ever annex them in. Now, I think that story changes when they get a grocery store or, you know, some big cash registers over there. And we wrote into the development agreement that the county can oppose and will essentially thwart their annexation of only a portion of the JDC ranch. So if they gerrymander so that they only get the cash registers and leave the rest of it for the county to operate, we're basically saying, no, take it all or take none of it. And we would look to do something similar. So if regardless of form base or MPD overlay zone, we would have a development agreement that basically says when West Haven says it's time, none of your protests count. And so if anybody who moves in and lives here protests, none of those will count towards West Haven's tally of protests. Basically, they're agreeing right now up front to annex in after they get the entitlements.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. In talking with staff, if we get something done with you guys and we go back to them and say, this is where we're at with the county, we have agreed that we would go back to West Haven and move forward with that.
See this a little bit like the corner over by the river. As soon as the city knew that we were affirmative on giving them their entitlements, even before we adopted the development agreement, they said, okay, fine, come on in, we'll annex you.
The smart farm.
Yep, smart farm. Yeah.
And
I'm gonna smile about Plain City because I raised my kids there. They went to Fremont and everybody fought the grocery store and now they love it, so.
yeah,
Charlie, I have a question. Did you say 7.5 acres?
Yeah.
Do we have a tool to get up to 150 units?
That would be the MPD overlay zone. So essentially, the MPD overlay zone is name your own destiny kind of zone. Now, I wouldn't focus so much on the units. I would take a lesson out of the form-based code, where we're looking more at the massing of those buildings and how they fit in with their surroundings. And so if, in order to get that amount of density, the amount of density we're talking about, 200 units on 7.5 acres, if that requires 7-story buildings, maybe the answer is no.
We won't go above 3. It makes no sense to build more than that. It gets too expensive.
Still, yeah. So, I mean, that, pretty good indication of what it could look like in the future.
Yeah, this was just our first attempt. That doesn't mean we're really, that's what we're coming with. We're coming here for direction and help to understand what we could get comfortable with.
How much density and probably in exchange for the density. You can get an idea.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, is it a project that we could get the county comfortable with? When we talk to staff, they're very comfortable. I'm not going to speak for you, but from our experience and our conversations, they were comfortable with it. Now, what that means as far as density and different things, we've talked about our sidewalks along the front, where with porch out over so they could walk down. It's a very walkable area. We did talk with staff about putting residences above the commercial, and I know that's popular, but that's also a very expensive way to build. Our thoughts were to keep the commercial out here, share a little bit of the parking. That's another thing. The way that's drawn, we still have 2.5 parking stalls per unit. So I don't know. There's not really any parking requirements either, but the success of a project really amounts to about 3 to 4 things. One is a big deal to us. That road coming in is a big deal to us because it's right up the freeway to 31st Street on. So we're within 3 miles of a freeway on-ramp. The biggest thing isn't getting renters there, it's keeping them there. And parking is the #1 complaint in apartment complexes, because if you can't park anywhere and you have to walk a half a mile, I think I heard earlier, nobody likes to walk. I don't even like to walk a quarter mile, by the way. But that being said, they have to have adequate parking. Oh, and some of these buildings, by the way, would have garages in them. We put them in on the first floor, on the back half of one of the areas. So there would be some garaging available and different things. But it's a product that we've had great deal of success with. They're 3-story walk-up apartments with, amenities. It'll have a clubhouse. I don't know if it'd be a pool or a pickleball court. We'd have a dog park. That's the next one. Dog parks in apartment complexes are like the #1 attraction. So all those amenities would come with it. We're just taking a rough shot at, this is what could work. Does it work for everybody? That's what we're here to discuss. And obviously we're not looking for a commitment tonight, but maybe a direction of what we'd come back with, that we could have a very meaningful conversation about accomplishing goals for the county and for us as developers.
It's a lot of density in that area, and I'd like to know what the zoning is around it for West Haven, or what they anticipate.
You do have Salt Point to the south, and their density's way more than that. I actually have 3 MDAs with West Haven City. They've allowed me up to 25 doors per acre for my apartment projects that they have. I have all the stuff on 21st Street and some different, but Salt Point was actually, I believe that was 27 doors per acre. And that may or may not be too many. I don't know. I'm just telling you what they have approved in the past.
Going south from this, though, is that their zoning?
Yes.
Is high
Salt
density?
Point's on 4,000. So you have 3,300 there. 3,600 is where I have the big single-family development there, and then you go to 4,000, and that's Salt Point.
The development, your development on 3600 is a little bit east of 35 though, right?
Yes, it is.
Part of the way up the block there.
Yeah, partway up the block.
'Cause that's a long block. There's no cross streets there yet. so,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of, right, seen a lot of pipe stacked up over there.
Yeah, we decided to buy it all up front because a year ago, you couldn't get concrete pipe to save your life, so we thought we better buy it, and now it's readily available. That's 10 cheaper. It always works out that way.
Yep.
So I'm assuming that West Haven's hesitancy is probably because of the density that they already have. Apartments there, right? I mean, it's close to 4,000 that has
No,
all the
what-
apartments. It's close to Midland that has a lot of that. So that's my concern, is just more density. And even if the one on 4,000 has a lot more density, I still don't see that as helping your case, right? Because we're still bringing in more apartments.
Well, the only
that
thing
way.
that maybe I would let you know is if you contacted the property management company there, they have a waiting list for people to come in there. They can't meet the demand that they currently have. I actually have 6 nephews and nieces living in Salt Point as we speak, and they just jacked the rates on them one more time, and so they're going to have to be moving out because they can't afford to stay there anymore. So density is always an interesting concept to me. I think the product can, and that's why we tucked our residential back in off the street. The biggest problem Salt Point faces isn't necessarily the density, because the residents out there are very upset that they made them put them out on the street. That's what they don't like. And I sat through all those meetings with my other projects and listened. And that was always the concern. And that's why I thought tucking ours back in off the corner and not making them so visible from the street. When that new road goes in, but that road is not going to be that's going to be a commuter road where they'll have a few stops along the way, but their idea is to take out the stop signs and stop lights and get people to the west in a faster and more convenient way.
That's interesting. I haven't seen that before.
I haven't either. I'm actually surprised that we haven't seen it. Usually there's a little more coordination.
The street?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, staff did not oppose it. They just figured if they took it to council, they probably wouldn't be able to get it. Which they say puts them in an interesting predicament, because project's going to put a burden on them and they're not going to benefit from it. My hope, to be honest, was to get in a position with the county that I can go back to the city and say, look, the county's going to do this, why don't we? And that's what staff kind of directed. Their staff directed us to try and.
well, you've got a 50-50, because the one project that we had before us went to Marriott Slaterville and the other one's in Weber County. So it's kind of a toss up. I'd like to see, like I said, it's such a political atmosphere with the growth that it doesn't make a lot of sense for these municipalities, established municipalities, incorporated areas, whatever you want to call them, to take these things in. I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever to leave that as Weber County, other than to let us do the dirty work and be the bad guys in the community, and then turn it over to them so that they can all look good, like it was forced on them. And that
Well,
gets. a little
staff won't
weird.
see it that way, but council might.
So I'm sitting on a group that's helping write new legislation for actually rewrite the annexation code and state code. And that's one of the big issues that we keep tossing around is until the cities are ready to actually be cities,
Yeah.
then one of the proposals put forth is, well, should the state crack down on development ability of the unincorporated area? Because it should be forced into cities. Right now, cities don't have to give consent when we develop on their border. We just have to give them a notification and the opportunity to respond. And then we have to give them a response to our response, or yeah, we have to give them a response to their response. And then after that, the 90 days have gone by. The county commission can make whatever decision they want. It's just it's a really cumbersome and silly and bureaucratic process. It's just a mess.
Yeah.
But until the cities are ready to be cities, it kind of works.
But that's the bad part here is that is that the tool of being a city is that you can dictate zoning wherever you want to. And that's what forced the hand onto the unincorporated area.
That's right.
So, that's not right because people have property rights.
That's right.
No matter where they're at in this process. So that's real frustrating that because you have a constituency that is against growth, that means that all growth stops within that designated area.
It'd be kind of fun to watch people rectify the dichotomy between no growth and pro market driven consumerism, conservative, platform. Because I mean, these communities, they vote conservative until it comes down to property rights.
And one thing that's a struggle out there for them right now is they have a moratorium on development agreements. They've had some issues on some in the past and it's caused them a lot of trouble. So they don't really have the ability to put a development agreement together currently.
Staff.
Yeah.
But that's forced politically back onto staff because of the fact that the constituency says they don't want any development.
Yeah, those 3 or 4 that made it on the council all ran on the no growth, not smart growth or planned growth, no growth.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because we formed a committee, 2 councilmen, 2 planning commission, all the staff department heads. We go in and we work out a negotiation to trade them out ground for the road. We go to our first meeting and the one councilman on the thing that agreed to everything voted no against us in the meeting. So unfortunately, it did take.
But she got reelected.
Yeah, not reelected, but once. But then we come back with some help from an attorney and she voted yes. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you can't go in and negotiate and agree to everything and have an agreement from the committee and then vote against it. But that's kind of what they're facing out there.
In my
Actually
experience, it
developed.
takes 2 or 3 budget sessions, so budget seasons, before they realize that no growth isn't the way to go, but it's political
And this
cycle.
project would really help their pitch to Kroger. So I don't.
Chair, in order to kind of get a kind of consensus, I guess what I'm concerned, or just wondering, maybe from Charlie, so this density doesn't fit Weber County alone. Normally we would ask for a lot of open space to go with this kind of density. And I don't know, I mean, we only control the 7 acres and there's no guarantee that there'll be a large park or facility in the vicinity for it. So that would be my big question is how do we, because this is very dense and there's a little bit of private open space. I mean, a little bit, but for
That's about
dense.
15% open space. actually.
Yeah, it's pretty
it-
tight for Weber County's current standard.
And West Haven City's park and rodeo grounds are a half a mile east of us at 3,300.
Okay,
So they have large parks there, a lot of soccer parks, a lot of tennis or pickleball courts, basketball courts, their rodeo ground,
so that's about a half a mile away.
half a mile east of us, right on 33.
And that's available, but to keep consistent with development in the rest of the county, we'd have to figure out what is it that the
that we'd need to get that kind of a density in this area? And I'm not sure I know what the answer is.
I think it's a relatively easy answer. In our work session, our last work session, we all landed on $2,000 per unit
Door. Yeah.
Now,
and that's not an,
that's where I was a little confused because Rick was saying you need to have a transferable right, then you pay the 2,000.
so every unit that you have
Uh-huh.
needs to pay the $2,000. So
Right.
if you don't have the right to develop and you have to transfer that in, you have to transfer it. And then now that you have it, you have to pay the
The $2,000.
So what determines whether you have the right to develop it? Because
There's-
right
there's not-
now, there's only, this is developed as A2, is that correct?
A2 or A1, which would be 1 unit to the acre,
So right now, there's like
7
seven,
units.
maybe 8 units that
7
have
max.
rights. So where do we get those other rights?
Oh, okay, so there's the question. So
That's the
the park fee is one thing and the transferable development rights is.
Yes, yes. So where do we get that transferable right?
And just to be clear, the park fee. Sorry, park donation, and donation was the word that I suggested the park district use because this really is, we're talking about in contract laws, the word is consideration.
Yeah.
This is equitable consideration on both sides. The developer's getting something, the county's getting something, because we're both working together doing something. And so, but we didn't want to say it's a park requirement because then it makes it seem like it's more of an exaction. And then there are particular rules that apply there. Just want to make it easy for Liam when we get sued, or easier for Liam. Not that anything's easy. So just straight down the gate or straight out the gate, $2,000 per unit. That is the number that we landed on. Now, we still haven't landed on whether or not that can and should be adjusted because we've got some smaller units versus bigger units. But it is where it is. Now, to get density in there,
Yeah.
if we stick to that same MO, and you don't have to stick to that MO, you could do what you want to do here. But if you say, all right, you can have density here, but you got to find it from somewhere else. You got to pick it off of what already exists. At that point, then the applicant is going to need to go to some of the farmers in the area that are in the TDR. Cross that area on the map, and I can zoom out to show that, and negotiate for all of those density rights. And that's just takes a checkbook and agreement, a transfer agreement. But we do know that we've got 1 or 2 large farmers with quite a bit of land that I'm more than happy to see that we've got a TDR ordinance because they want to keep farming and want to keep it in their family for a little while.
So is that what we're looking for here is the TDR and then the $2,000 per unit?
So what I'm saying is you can look for that. Now, where this is right on the border of the city and it is in the city's annexation area, another flip of that coin is to say, you know what, maybe we just invent development rights. Maybe we just say, all right, 200, that's magical number that you get just by virtue of the authority that the county commission ultimately has. I mean, if you want a really nice big park, give them 500 development rights. It's going to be part of the city in the future anyway, right? You could have that attitude if you want to. So it's kind of give and take a little bit. And it's really, I know we want to be fair and equitable, but equity does not mean the same thing as equality. And so everything is unique.
And this has better infrastructure already going into it than most. If we want something to be developed, needs to be developed than a lot of Western Weaver. So I think that is something to consider.
Well, and especially for this kind of density because
Right.
it's near major transportation.
Near major transportation roads that are meant to be large collectors. But that density does require parks. And so we need to make sure that we do get something, if it's not on site, make sure that we're getting enough to the Parks District to ensure that.
Yeah, and I'd like to get their input on this. Has Roger seen this? Has the Parks District seen this at all? Yeah.
Well, I don't think so.
That's something that I'd like them to,
Yeah, my understanding is this is in the Parks District, so if it eventually gets annexed, it'll either need to be de-annexed from the Parks District, or they're going to be double taxed essentially for city parks and for unincorporated district parks. But if you look to the north on 3500, there's a Christmas tree there. That is a West Haven city. Sorry, just all I see is a Christmas tree when I look at it now.
It's about 30 feet tall.
That's right. That is a West Haven park. It's a few acres with a trail that wraps around it. And just to the south of that, you guys approved a townhome project, and they've got open space that they were going to donate for a park, but We asked them if they were going to donate it, and the Parks District wasn't ready to take it on. Why don't they just donate it to West Haven, because it's contiguous with their other park, and West Haven declined. And so it's just open space for them. One of the,
Is that half a mile away?
it's to the, I can't tell.
It's to the south or to the north and on the west side of 3500 west.
This is quite a ways away. This is different than the one you're talking about.
No, it's about the same distance. You're just going a different direction. You go east to the one and you go north to the other.
'Cause it
You
might be-
also have Canesville Elementary just within 500 yards that has.
Oh, it's
big
right
park
there.
And
Yeah.
walking trail around it as well. As far as the park, I'm gonna call them fees. We'd be happy to call it a donation. That doesn't, that wouldn't. If I could put up a monetary value for something in exchange for not providing it, I would welcome that.
And commissioners, listen, this gives a lot for the city to chew on. If we are issuing building permits and getting impact fees for our system facilities that we need improved, the city is not getting those fees. If we are giving rezones and requiring recording $2,000 per unit to be put into the Parks District, there's no guarantee that that park is anywhere near the city. In fact, this might be an easy steal for you guys, give them 10,000 units on 7 acres and
I'll take that.
and put, what is that, 10,000, put that $2 million, no, 10,000, that'd be $200 million over by the
That
river.
might be a little.
All right, let me remind you not to think only about monetary.
Oh,
We do
sorry.
live in this area, right? Like, so.
Well,
Well,
and-
and be a nice area.
Yeah, I like to go extreme from
I can promise this,
extreme to
if I-
reasonable.
If I may, I don't build barracks housing. We build very quality, very appealing architecturally, and our products have been very successfully received by neighborhoods and by tenants. It's important to us to build a product that is pleasing to the community, and we would be open to taking directions from architectural styles. As you can see, I don't know if West Point was the place to place a silo on that, but it's been a big hit out there. A lot of people have given us a lot of positive feedback on that. And I think it fits that area really well.
I agree with that, Rick. I like that architecture.
Yeah, it's right on Antelope. If you're ever out, you can see what's going on there. That's our team. It is important to me to put a product that is very appealing to the public. Because a lot of people do build barracks housing. That's what I call it, for the lack of a better term.
And I think my neighbors, which I feel like that's who I'm representing being on here, it's the density, right?
Sure.
They don't care how good a quality the apartment is. They're not living in them. It's that type of atmosphere is there now, right? And so I have to, when they're asking me questions, I have to defend you if we're in favor of it, to say, this is why it's a good thing for our
Well,
community,
But if you also look at the fact that, let's say that 150 young families moved in there. And so you're also representing the possibility of 400 people living there in that same community, that somebody's going to try and keep them out because they don't want it. There's rights for that as much as the existing.
I agree.
So
Yeah.
I appreciate your comments, but I also see both sides of
Right.
that.
And that's what I'm trying to do as well. And trying to understand. And I like the architecture. I like that you're going to have businesses there. I feel like we need businesses in that area, and like the ones across the street right now, I think that's a good place for them, and it's working well. So I like that you're adding that with it.
And I think where that area is going to get directed for a lot of traffic to be able to get in and out of there seamlessly. I think, I don't remember, somebody said that maybe this would be the right area for this type of product. And maybe we'd come to a comfortable density that everybody is comfortable with. I know the number seems daunting, but there's more open space there than it appears.
About 50 feet between the units in the backyard, shared space, or is it more?
No, it's 40 to 50 feet probably. I have, yeah, and
So it's
because,
shared backyard, they're about 50 feet, and so it's like
Yeah.
backyard patio, and you're facing your neighbor's
Yeah.
backyard patio.
and so, and what happens in these buildings, there's a section and like you don't have to walk around the whole building to get there. There's pass-throughs.
Yeah.
So they can get to the back. Like I say, you know, parts of your general plan talk about the missing middle. And I feel like this product addresses that. As we know, housing is, people in this room have a lot of firsthand experience. Single-family dwelling is a hard sell these days, with interest rates and costs up. This is what younger families and transition. I lived in an apartment for a year while I built a house once. And so I think there's a need for it. I think the area could be done right and it could be done tastefully. And I think it would benefit a lot of people.
So how many units exactly are you, right now, what have you drawn here? How many?
That's about 180.
That's 180 units. So some of them are like 1 to 3 bedroom apartments.
We
and some
don't
of them
do
are
any-
townhomes.
If we do ones, it'd be 10 maybe.
Oh, okay.
It's all going to be 2s and 3s.
2s and 3s.
We do try to, younger families is where we find. If we build in town, we go 1s and 2s. But when we build out here, we build 2s and 3s.
2s and 3s, and then some townhomes.
No townhomes.
None of this is none of
None of
these are
those are
townhomes.
designed.
Oh, and that's how you get
That's
the
where you get the
That's
density.
what I'm
That's
trying to
why
figure
it
out.
looks, the number is more daunting than I think the number of buildings. And I was going to ask that is, you know, maybe the number does, because some of those buildings are 30 plexes. And that's where the numbers add up fast. But some are only 24 plexes and some are 18s because we put garages underneath half the side of it. And those have been very popular in the area too. And the parking, 2.5 parking stalls per door is a big number.
That's huge for an apartment, I agree.
It'll get filled.
Yeah.
Not 2.5 rather than 2.
Yes.
2 gets tight.
Yeah, and like I say, and the biggest push there is to keep your tenants because they will leave you over.
Well, and if they're quality and they have garages, then you have better tenants, right? Because
Yes,
you're
you
having
do.
a higher price, so it's better tenants as well. How many, you're doing business suites as well, right?
Yeah.
How many of those are gonna be there?
Well, what it would be is currently it's drawn at 20,000 square feet.
Okay,
And we probably wouldn't do our interior walls until we get tenants. It'd be a shell. And this one might want 1,000, this one might want 1,500, this one might want 4,000. So
okay.
it would depend. They aren't predetermined equal units. They're designed to look that way, but
Yeah.
the interior walls are done accordingly to meet
Okay.
the needs.
Okay.
Our hope and in talking is maybe you know, a sandwich shop, a little restaurant, things of that, so that people can stay in the area.
Right.
If you're looking at the form-based ordinance, I mean, this effectively does something very similar. It just pushes that commercial. As long as and this would be the only caveat that I think we would have, the commercial spaces need to have front doors on the street. Even though they will probably still have back doors. And so it's just working with the tenants to make sure that.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about with the wider sidewalk. Was it 6 feet or is it 10 feet?
It's 10
Yeah,
for the
10
the
foot.
park, the pathway.
And we talked about having canopies over the entrances, so when they're walking down the sidewalk, they actually walk under the canopies. That's some of the conversations we've had.
Well, that's one of the things you'll find in the form-based code is we don't talk about density, and for a reason, because density it's a boogeyman. What is the impact? What does it look like? How much traffic? All that kind of stuff. So, commissioners, I think in the interest of time, the applicants are, I think, scoping out whether or not they should even bother submitting an application. I mean, we charge a pretty good application fee, and you know, whether or not it'd be worth their time. And then, as far as feedback goes, we don't need to lock in a number yet.
No, we're not asking that.
In fact, one of the things that we will do as staff is we'll look at the West Haven future land use map and the existing zoning in West Haven and do a comparison analysis so you guys will know. I mean, we're not going to throw West Haven obviously to the wolves because they won't take this project. You can. If what I've said in the past few hours doesn't indicate that, you can if you want to. Just trying to make sure that there is some cohesiveness. At the end of the day, this whole corner is going to be West Haven, so just trying to do them a solid, whether or not they like it. I guess that's kind of the mentality. Our biggest concern was, will the county commission take on the fight, the political fight? And it sounds like so far the one I was most concerned about, Commissioner Bolos, is in favor. So.
Yeah, she was the most in favor of it. If I may add, none of our buildings are over 34 feet high. So
I'd like you to consider looking at the form base. I think this is a better place for form base than the one that we've had proposed to us.
Yeah, I agree.
Really do.
well, if you're only, I heard maybe a month away. I mean, if it's that.
Well, the form base that we're a month away from is with a street regulating plan that's not in
Okay.
your location. So we'd have to look at a street regulating plan for this area. But that wouldn't be too hard for us to do because we're already going to be looking at what the surrounding uses are. And so we can prescribe a form base that even overlaps into West Haven, even though it won't be effective over there. And then if it gets,
Well, but if you build it, they will come.
that's right. And if it gets annexed in, then at least they've got the framework of something to work from
Exactly.
for a new kind of village area.
They don't want to lose this money. They don't want, if staff could come in and take it, they take it today. They know what they're losing and they still believe that eventually, not something that they accept, eventually they'll end up there, this, you know, through.
They won't get the suitcase full of money that comes with the impact fees. The easiest money to get, they won't get.
Well, the interesting thing here is they're gonna get a whole bunch more money with this than they will over 7.5 houses being built on 1 acre.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and also, it really, and they understand it, will increase their chances of landing a Kroger store there.
Yeah, it's
And the
good.
one they're comparing it to is West Point. You to go out to West Point, Smith's is surrounded by apartments and open space, because there's a lot of open space over there still. The Prevedel families that I've dealt with on my other project, they have all theirs, and that's the one they're looking at, and that's a highly successful store for Smith's.
Well, that one in West Point started out with not all of that stuff around it.
That's
It
right.
was kind of by itself.
And then it just eventually filled in. But those stores aren't gonna come without rooftop.
Right.
They're not.
Right.
That was very evident in their meeting. They flew in executives from Chicago for that meeting, so they're serious about it, but they kind of laid it out for them. I would hope the city would learn to maybe embrace this and move forward. I think it's in an area, I'm not stacking it in the middle of beautiful subdivisions. And I think you probably planned accordingly the way you did your map, that this kind of product would fit in that area because we're not stacking it in a bunch of single family home area.
Existing.
Existing, correct.
Seven people didn't want to pay that kind of, you know what I mean, can they afford it? I'm really thinking about residents in this, buy a home today. You just can't do it. Where do they go? They stay in their community. That is our hope on this, is to allow families to be able to have that missing middle in the interior of the being able to find that.
And that's why multiple bedrooms in this product is very important to us, because it is the families we're after, not our, let the single people go to Ogden. I don't mean with that, but that, you know, that's more their life. But this will be a family-oriented product that would be, have amenities accordingly.
Well, and Rick, I'm glad you brought up the West Because when I look at those apartments, to me, it's apartments, and even though it's a little bit different than what you're doing, you're having your business stuff on the surrounding rather than underneath it. It seems nice. It looks like a nice area, even though it's high density, it's still nice. That's where I shop at Smith's there. And it's good for me to have that picture of it as well. I have an additional question for you though.
Okay.
I mean, even though it's part of our general plan to have this in there, is this proposed road, I'm assuming proposed, the 33 to 3600?
No, they're buying the property right now. And like I say,
Okay.
we have already we've already dedicated our property to the city for
Okay.
that road.
And do you know when they're going to put that in, when that's going to be implemented?
They're trying to get funds right now. They acquired the funds in order to purchase the properties necessary. And their goal is within 2 years.
Because that's my concern with your development is, as you know, 3300 going to Midland is a serious safety hazard, right? I mean, trying to get on Midland from 3300 is
But
scary.
as you know,
So
they are widening it as WACOG and the city put an agreement together. And it is being widened all the way down to 3500. They're doing the work right now.
Okay.
And granted, but the other road does need to come, but it is coming for sure.
Okay.
All right, commissioners, anything else?
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you. And it sounds like you'll be working with staff on some of the things that have come up in the meeting tonight. And
I didn't hear hell no, so that's good.
well, I'm giving it the pitch. You know how I said that. You're going to be working with staff. It's established already, Charlie. The appointment's made.
I'd like to make a joke about that, but I'm really fond of my wife, but if I wanted to hell no, I'd just go home. Just kidding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah. All right. Session item number, which one are we doing, Charlie? Base? Okay.
Yep.
We got two.
Two.
Got it.
Because we do want to make sure we make some progress on this tonight. Okay. Couple things. The map has changed just a little bit. If you take a look at what I handed out to you, we got a much smaller park. Right there, that's a 5-acre park on just to the north of 900. And essentially that's the configuration that we would look to Mr. Blanche, regardless of whether or not this goes through. If his rezone goes through, we would look to get that 5 acres in exchange for his other 5-acre rezone. Along 1150, the last map that you looked at, 1150 South or 12th Street corridor, it was magenta for vehicle oriented commercial. And I've been trying to wrap my head around the best way to do this, because form-based ordinances, you try and regulate the form and function of the buildings at the street level. But your governing documents are based on what that street is designated as. And if we were to say that 12th Street is a vehicle oriented commercial, or the ordinance is written in a way where we would say, all right, you got to have 45-degree angle parking on 12th Street. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And so really, we're not talking about a vehicle oriented commercial street here. We're actually talking about essentially an open space corridor. And the vehicle oriented commercial is the cross streets. And so that's kind of what you see here. Instead of an open space corridor, I just put a new category on the map, which we'll have to add into the ordinance: limited access arterial street. Now, I didn't color 4700, at least for the village area, that color, because I think 4700, we do want to see some street oriented. I mean, that's the other main street, is 4700. So 4700 and 9th South, that's essentially your main street and center street of your future city out here. And then 1150 is essentially the bypass. Normally, I would not advocate for a bypass, but we've got all that industrial in Western Weaver with a lot of truck traffic. But we're going to need a bypass. It just doesn't make any sense to send those trucks down the middle of even a 3 or 5 lane road with any parking. So the other thing I did is I actually eliminated every other block intersection on 12th Street. So you can see on 4600, on 4800, and on 5000,
and on 4400. I took those street connections out, so we don't want to have multiple, we want this to be pretty efficient and not have multiple conflict points. And this was as requested by our engineers, which I think is a good idea. So every 2 blocks, if you drive down Washington or on your way home, just count every 2 blocks, and that's really what the interval is. And it's only for a certain stretch. Once you get out past the river or the other direction, then we can even go 4 or 5 blocks. So you can really, pick up some speed between intersections. Okay. I realigned a few things. 700 South, I had it north of the canal. And there's actually a development that's being proposed just north of the canal. And they're in discussions and negotiations with UDOT to get access to 4700. And they just want to know where we want the streets to go. And as we did that, we realized the way that it was previously configured, there just wasn't enough distance between 400 South and 500 South and 600 South. We just kind of had them crammed in because we pushed 700 so far to the north. So this actually ties 700 South into an existing road. We would suggest that we work with the future owner of the corner of that road that you see right there that angles in to get a through street. But if we don't, it's not going to hurt much. Those existing roads in that Cherokee Village, they're private streets. And so we're going to have limited control on what happens there. But if we want a public thoroughfare, we just go to the HOA and we buy it from them or work with the developer before they actually start getting building permits to donate.
So so on 700, Charlie, is that 2 questions? Is the proposal that you have now on the east side or west side of 4700?
Mr. Blanch's proposal?
No, on 700. I thought you said that there was going to be, that someone was bringing something.
Oh, I see. So north of the canal on the east side of 4700.
Okay.
So 5 and 600 kind of lines up right through where part of their property will be.
Okay.
And also readjusting 5 and 600, it just makes it a straight line across the 500 across the frontage of the school property. So that really worked out.
So 700 over here. We're showing that is as part of the green, right? That's your road. Correct?
Say it again.
So if you're looking at 700 on this map, and you've got it in the green, you're looking at that road continuing east, and are you looking at that road continuing west?
That's right. So the green over by the intersection of 4300 West?
43, 47, all the way along near 45. I mean, that's one continuous road, right?
Yeah, yep. So 700, so the green that you see there that crosses, that's actually a trail corridor along the canal.
Okay.
So the 700 South, that's actually, the label is placed right on top of the street. So the dashed line that's right behind 700 South, that's the street we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
And so if we're looking at from west to east, you're at rural residential, and then you go into higher density until you get to the intersection of 4700 where we're talking about small residential there, and then it kind of progresses back out into lower densities. And then you get to the green polygon that has a green dash line that goes through it. Well, every time you see a green dash line go through something, that's a big fat question mark on who's going to build that road. And so the green polygon isn't necessarily to say that we won't consider any development in that area. But it is to say to a developer, hey, green polygon, that means open space. We're not going to do much for you unless you up the ante a little bit. And so it just gives us a good spot to negotiate. Maybe a developer builds that road and they build homes on either side of that. So that's essentially, if you're looking for the line that I'm talking about, it's a dashed green line that intersects with 4300 West, right through the park parcel.
Or that expansion school.
Yeah.
Oh,
This is where the school exists, right here on 900. This is school board property over here.
That's exactly right. Yep. So yeah, if you're looking at the blown up map, it's the green line that's off on the corner. But if you're looking at the smaller map, it's the green line that runs essentially north of the elementary school. Right here.
This is potential, this is existing.
Right. Yeah, dash lines are future streets, potential streets, and
And-
solid lines are existing.
So the green streets you're saying?
Green streets are, basically, we're saying there's no one going to be developing on either side of it because it's open space.
Okay.
In fact, we'll jump into the,
Not sure who is building it. So
right.
the square is the polygon you're referring to? I was trying to figure out, find a green polygon anywhere else.
Sorry, the polygon is the whole big blob here.
This whole thing.
Sorry.
Polygon.
And then, so on 900, we have where it intersects with 4700. This is where this is the item we were discussing earlier.
Up center of town right there.
Yeah, right there. And then that continues west at some point in time. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. And then you're going with that, or at least you're showing it going down beyond the river?
900, no. So we're not looking at the river yet.
Okay.
In fact, for the West Weaver Village area, we probably should put some parameters on it. Maybe it is the river. I was debating on what to show you guys, but yeah, honestly, 900 may go up to the river, but our expectation is that 1150 right now crosses the river, and then the next crossing is going to be
400. Okay. Over here. 400.
Yep, 400. Yep.
Up here. Yeah, and that was kind of why I was asking the questions that I asked, is because where else are we going to cross the river? So 400, and then the 1600 or 1800 on the south side.
You got it. Yep. And then the blue blob that you see on the left-hand side of the map that kind of looks like a river, that's actually just a wetland area.
Yeah.
Yep. So at some point in time, maybe it's filled in, or maybe we're pumping all the drainage to it, or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Until then, the farmer's farming. So whatever he wants to do. So that's the map. Any questions about those changes? I'll let you really study it. Now, I have a version that has the aerial imagery, and I've been doing that just to try and make sure we're not plowing through houses, or if we are plowing through houses, we're not plowing through a house that somebody built yesterday. Now, that said, if you want to look at that, I can bring a printed version of it. Sensitive because there's no intention to plow through anybody's house, but sometimes there are buildings that are right on these block lines, and so unless
Collateral
we're
damage,
yeah, yep,
sorry.
yeah, and at the end of the day, everybody gets fair market value.
And that's fine. Believe me, mine was targeted for the corridor, for the West Weaver portion of the corridor, right through my house. Great, that's where I want to be, because you're going to buy it from me. I'm out.
Now I know when I can.
Well, and frankly, the sensitivity is only so long as those particular homeowners, landowners, or occupants decide to live there. But as soon as they decide to flip the property for a higher profit, chances are the house is coming down anyway, at least if it's an older home.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
that's why I wasn't too afraid of going, drawing lines a little more lackadaisical.
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to be callous about it, and I'm not, because I realize that, that your home's your home. I get that. And it's very personal. But at the same time, for purposes that we have in front of us, that's kind of how we have to view it, or at least that's how I think we have to view it, because we have to make decisions that aren't popular. They're not great, but they have to be made.
That's how it's surprising.
Thank you.
Like, that doesn't sound like him.
That's very true.
I was like, okay.
Yeah. 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 Well, we had a couple of participants in our general plan all the way through. Great people. Couldn't have asked for better. Well, they've landed in Marriott Slaterville. They've landed in the middle of a development, and they're probably much better off for it, even though that was so hard for them to come to, that's kind of where I'm coming from. Sorry. It's that head over heart thing. So no, we're good. We're good. We're good. I've been called worse, let me tell you.
All right, commissioners, where we left off in the text. Are you guys comfortable? Let's see. I don't remember where we left off now. Street types. Are you guys comfortable with these street type categories? Did we go over these?
Do you want to review them one more time to wrap your head around them? So I've color coded them. I mean, the whole point of all this is, unfortunately for colorblind people, is to provide a really easy ordinance to use with a map.
Charlie, just scroll down to where you start using them. So right there,
There.
oh, back up. Right there, just go through what they are right
Great.
there.
Great.
And then that way, everybody might have that a little fresher in their mind as we go down through.
Perfect. That's great. So GNI, that stands for government and institutional. If you look at actually look at your map, look at the legend on the map. Let's just, when we get to the single family residential, those are kind of self-explanatory. So let's just start with small lot residential. SLR, up to a 4-family dwelling can go on as small as 3,000 square feet for SLR. Okay. Multifamily residential, we don't say how many can fit in there. Fit what you can, but your height limit is 50 feet. And you got to be able to accommodate all the other things that we're asking for, parking and drainage, all that kind of stuff. Mixed use commercial at the street level, multifamily and other uses above and behind with height restrictions, no lot minimum. Okay. Vehicle oriented commercial, same as mixed use commercial with special considerations for vehicle oriented uses. Okay. And then government institutional, that's same as vehicle oriented commercial. So it essentially swallows up mixed use as well. And that's so vehicle oriented commercial with special considerations for government and institutional uses. So basically saying there are some allowances for government institutional uses to not have to follow the same rules and government institutional streets. So that's what you have now going across the top here. You're color coded the same way: government institutional, vehicle oriented commercial, mixed use commercial, multifamily residential, small lot residential, medium, large, rural residential, estate lot residential, and open space. Now, open space doesn't mean it's open. It's kind of weird. It just means that it's predominantly open. Further down, we'll see that buildings on an open space parcel cannot occupy more than 2.5% of that parcel. Want to have a golf course? Great, put a pro shop on it. So you can put a building on it. You want to have agricultural uses? Great, put some farms out there.
Wetlands don't mean wetlands either. And there's a document about that. It'll tell you all about that.
Yep, that's right. That's right. We're gonna make up a word and then say it means something that it doesn't. Okay.
2 weeks out of the year.
That's right. Now, I believe we got through the accessory uses table. Do you guys recall, or do you want to readdress? Okay.
I thought we'd go. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Where did we get to, Charlie? What page?
So I'm on 6 of 62 here. I don't recall going over the agricultural use table. Nope. Yeah, we did. Yep.
I think we did. Yeah.
We were talking about
Yeah, because
having your own chickens and.
Yep.
Yep.
The bee man.
Liam's our bee expert.
The slaughtering that tipped me off. Okay.
Here we go. Now, that might,
Alcohol.
we're roll back up just a little bit.
So we're back into animal
Okay.
types of
Yeah.
uses.
This might be where we were.
Yep.
Yeah, it was right here in the
Yep.
food.
Yeah, I paused for dramatic effect on you guys okay with alcohol? Great.
You said, yes, please. You thought you're.
Or not.
Now, also keep in mind that the devil's in the details in how it's written. So alcohol beverage production, the production, manufacturing, brewing, and wholesale sales of alcoholic beverages. Now, what about a brewery? A brew pub? Those are listed a little bit differently as you drive down into the uses. In fact, you can have a brewery that's accessory and incidental to a pub or a cafe. So small batch brewing is different than wholesale manufacturing of alcohol. And we kind of address many of the other types of manufacturing uses. There's not a lot of them here, but most of them the same or similar kind of way. So we try and address it kind of on the scale of its impact. So bakery, delicatessen or catering, large, right? A large one. So bakery or other food preparation services primarily intended for off-site consumption. We know it's large because you're not consuming it here, you're taking it with you. Small is the next one down. Bakery or small batch food processing and retail sales of goods produced on premises, limited to no greater than 5,000 square feet floor area. Now, I think you guys changed that, didn't you?
Well, they changed it on the, like a butcher shop. So up above somewhere, we did change. Oh, no, there it is right there. There's the butcher's, the next one. Yeah, so we did get through this.
Look at that. Sorry. I have my notes. So.
Would we feel the same as the bakery as we would a butcher shop or space?
It's a big bakery.
Big butcher shop.
Because it also doesn't allow slaughtering, right? Yeah, this.
For a cooler.
Food
Is
on
what
site
the
slaughter.
anticipation was, for them to have a big cooler to have like halves hang them in.
Like
I don't
the
know.
one in Rocky, like that's big.
How are you got to train? You got to get out there and train.
Gym or something, right?
Butcher shop / gym. I like it.
That's a great business model.
Well, you got them hanging, so you got rail, you know. Well, but then you gotta anticipate that maybe half of that is an area to store like the halves. And then the other half is where they cut and wrap and sell.
Can't
They're
slaughter.
not gonna put a bullet in the cow's head. No, they're gonna get that.
Scroll down. Sorry. Oh, so.
So. You okay with that? It is permitted. It's listed as permitted in the multifamily residential.
Start breaking ribs.
Okay. Otherwise, large butcher shop, greater than 10,000 square feet. It's just in the vehicle oriented commercial and the government institutional. Okay, and this is where we actually ended up. I found it in my notes here. So we got down to residential uses. Office. There we go. Now, dwelling in single family, limiting or prohibiting it in manufacturing, or sorry, multifamily residential. I see the MFR, I'm thinking manufacturing, and higher, because you don't want a single family dwelling to inhibit your ability to actually get the higher uses out of this. So, but everywhere else allowed. Two-family dwellings, you could see the allowance for them opens up in the multifamily, in the small residential. Same with 3 and 4. And then you get into the multifamily. It's everything multifamily residential. Dwelling unit in general. So a dwelling unit or condominium dwelling unit as defined by Title 101, Chapter 2, that is part of a commercial or multifamily dwelling building. So just making sure that any other kind of unit that's may not be listed here is also allowed as long as it's part of a multifamily or commercial building.
Is that where an AUD would be? Alternate dwelling, ADU?
Potentially, but that would still be accessory. I mean, this is the night watchman facilities, but it's also, if you want, this is how we get a single family dwelling, but also street level commercial. Because you say, okay, instead of just a single family dwelling as a standalone building, you put your single family dwelling on the second level and then your commercials at the bottom. So we just want to make sure it was clear that you can still have only one dwelling on a parcel if you want. You just have to provide that street level commercial space. Okay, hotel, motel, lodging houses. Hopefully that's pretty clear. Residential facilities. So these three things we need to take a really hard look at, because I don't think we're in compliance with state or federal laws. But in the absence of that, we haven't had the time to really push on it, and we haven't had any hot button issues on the subject. Our code currently lists them as conditional uses in most other zones. That's disparate treatment. We need to provide fair housing. That's the Fair Housing Act. And so if residential is allowed, then these kind of facilities are allowed, and we have to give reasonable accommodations. Not only are they allowed, we also need to say, all right, if it's in a single family dwelling, meaning single family equals up to 4 unrelated people, that's the definition of single family for some reason. And they need 8 in order for that facility, that residential facility, to be successful, then we probably should allow them to do 8 and give them the concession for the code says. So we're already going to have to give special concessions to these uses, regardless of how out of date our ordinances are. So that's right, up to 4 unrelated. Yep. So if it is a facility like this, then it is possible that if they come to us and they say, hey, we need a reasonable accommodation for these very reasonable and verifiable reasons, we can't make a residential unit like this work unless we have 5 unrelated people. 8 unrelated, whatever that number is. As long as it is a reasonable argument, and we get the blessing of our attorneys that we won't get sued one way or the other, we should probably allow it. The whole point is yes. These specific uses, yeah. Yep. Can go off code. Yep. And we never will.
But
Kind of.
But that's why they're by permit only, is for the conditional use, right?
So in the rest of your code, it is listed as conditional use. I think that's the thing that's not in compliance primarily with state and federal. If if residential dwellings are allowed in the zone, then a residential facility for old people, handicapped people, for troubled youth are required to be allowed as well. It doesn't mean that a commercial facility that provides commercial activities or operations for these youth need to be allowed. We just need to have the allowance for a residence to be located in a residential area. So they have to have the same level of access, same ease of access to housing in all residential areas. That's regardless of what zone you're in, form-based or not. I don't mean to make this. We don't have limits on the size of a single family dwelling. Yeah.
So. Okay, so now I'm understanding why the conditional use is kind of a tough thing for it to be, or for that to be under, because it's a residence.
Yep. And so if we're going to make this conditional, then we got to make all the other dwellings.
Exactly. So everybody's got to have a conditional.
Yep. That's right. They do have to follow the rules that are not going to inhibit their reasonable accommodation. And we're not going to know what that is until they tell us what the reasonable accommodation is. And so it might be parking. We might say, look, you need to have 5 parking spaces because you've got, well, that's a really bad example. Well, let's say that in our single family residential zone, we require a minimum of 5 parking. Let's just to be extreme. They might come in and say, hey, we can't fit all of our everything that we need for these folks and a wheelchair ramp to get into our facility with 5 parking spaces. Can we please do 3? And that's yeah, and that's right. Yeah, that would be a reasonable accommodation. But we need to have a minimum of 3 because so we can apply reasonable conditions as well. Even though it's not a conditional use permit, they're going to have staff members. And so we may be able to say, look, if you've got
they had 5 non-related members, one living in a single-family home, we tell them no. But if 5 people need station,
Right.
say they want to live in a single-family home, then we have, yes, but what if it's 7? So, I just, there's no. limit.
Where's the number? Yep.
Where's the number? That's what
Now, I would say if we are challenged on it, I mean, if somebody came in and asked for more than double, so if somebody came in and asked for more than, I think I would say, show me a reasonable accommodation there. Right. Yep. So there are a lot of limitations. They can't, it's not a free license to violate all of them, just a few of them in order to make it fairly accessible for folks who are looking for housing in these situations.
So you're saying people with conditions need conditional use?
That's what we previously were saying.
Oh,
but-
okay.
They don't mean that it's permitted, like it is someone else, don't mean it is like, get such a.
That's right, because to be fair, who amongst us doesn't have conditions?
That's what
That's right.
thinks I'm being mean.
Okay,
Trust me, he's talked about here.
so short-term rental and both short-term rental and owner-occupied short-term rental is in the form base. We didn't mess with it at all. Most of this is already adopted for the Ogden Valley. It's just we're bringing it over. Potentially. Well, maybe. Wait, only in the form base, and wait till we get to the very last section of this code, because there is a workforce housing section of the code. It is only workforce, yes. So we could put additional limitations on short terms. Okay, I'm gonna put a note here.
I don't live in Eden, but I've traveled to some valley in Park City and I've seen what's happened all of.
But this is just for the.
That's right.
Just for the form base, but it's not allowed at all right now. Form base is not allowed.
Correct. This, if you adopt this form base, well, if you adopt the form base and apply it to property, right now, this is just an ordinance that's not applied to any properties. And so there's a couple more steps that a landowner would need to get to short term. But yeah, if you adopt this and somebody asks for form base and you give it to them, then they're entitled. Unless we have something else in here. So I'll yeah. Okay, perfect. That's actually a leading discussion for the Ogden Valley. 30, and we got through 4 lines of code.
Code. Okay.
I was hoping to get a little bit further on this. If you guys, could I ask you this? Well, you know what? We have a work session next week
On the 18th,
18th.
on Wednesday. That's right,
Wednesday.
a week from tomorrow.
because of the holiday.
Okay. I'll put this at the very top of that list.
Okay.
The agenda might be short, but the discussion won't be.
That
Thank you,
sounds
guys.
good. Okay. Thanks, Charlie. I guess we are adjourned, right?
Back, I saved mine.
That's the last time.